The 49th floor was drowning in smoke when Aaron Miles made the decision that would change everything. He ran toward the danger instead of away from it. While executives trampled each other, rushing for the exits, this janitor with calloused hands and a physicist's mind climbed through the chaos, his worn notebook falling from his pocket as he carried out a trapped intern. When CEO Charlotte Kane saw those equations scattered across the marble floor, solutions to problems her best engineers couldn't solve, she realized the man who cleaned their offices might be the only one who could save her empire. Stay with me to discover how a single father's hidden brilliance transformed from midnight scribbles to a revolution that shook Silicon Valley. And hey, drop a comment about which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The November rain hammered against the windows of the Meridian Tech Tower like an accusation, each drop a reminder of promises the company couldn't keep. On the 49th floor, Charlotte Kane stood before the board of directors, her reflection ghost-like in the rain-streaked glass as she delivered news that tasted like ash in her mouth. "The Prometheus system has failed," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Complete cascade failure across all logistics networks. Our clients are pulling contracts. We're looking at losses approaching 800 million. The boardroom erupted. Voices overlapped. Accusations flew like shrapnel, and Charlotte watched her life's work crumble in real time. She'd built Meridian Tech from a garage startup to a Fortune 500 company, but none of that mattered now. The AI system they'd staked everything on, 2 years of development, hundreds of millions in investment, had collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. "Charlotte, this is unacceptable." Richard Blackstone, the lead investor, slammed his palm on the mahogany table. "You assured us Prometheus would revolutionize supply chain management. Instead, it's revolutionized corporate failure." She wanted to defend herself, to explain that the mathematical framework should have worked, that their best minds had verified every algorithm. But excuses were luxury items she couldn't afford. The truth was simpler and more damaging. They'd built their castle on sand, and now the tide had come in. 3 floors below, in the building's mechanical heart, Aaron Miles pushed his mop bucket through the server room's pristine corridors. The hum of countless processors created a white noise that reminded him of ocean waves. Or maybe that was just wishful thinking from a man who hadn't seen the ocean in 5 years. Not since Sarah's funeral. His phone buzzed. Marcus, his 7-year-old son, had sent another drawing through his babysitter's phone. This one showed 2 stick figures labeled Dad and Me standing in front of what looked like a rocket ship. The message read, "Mrs. Chen helped me spell this. Dad, when you come home, can we talk about why rockets need special math?" Aaron smiled despite the ache in his chest. Marcus had his mother's curiosity, that insatiable hunger to understand how things worked. Sarah would have known exactly how to nurture that spark. Aaron was doing his best, but his best meant working 3 jobs to keep them afloat, including this midnight shift cleaning offices for people who never saw him as anything more than part of the furniture. He pulled out his notebook, a battered thing held together with rubber bands and hope, and sketched a quick diagram of thrust vectors and trajectory calculations. He'd explain it to Marcus tomorrow morning over breakfast, assuming he could stay awake after his shift. These little teaching moments were all he had left of his old life, fragments of the professor he used to be before grief rewrote his story. The notebook was full of such fragments. Between shopping lists and Marcus's school schedules were equations that would have made his MIT colleagues weep with either joy or envy. Solutions to problems he read about in discarded technical journals from the recycling bins. Improvements to systems he'd never touch. Mathematical poetry written in the margins of a life lived in survival mode. He'd been working on one particular problem for months now, a logistics optimization algorithm he'd noticed in a Meridian Tech white paper someone had thrown away. The approach was fundamentally flawed, built on assumptions that would cascade into failure under real-world conditions. He'd filled 20 pages with corrections, improvements, elegant solutions that transformed their brute force approach into something almost musical in its efficiency. But who would listen to a janitor's mathematical opinions? Who would believe that the man emptying their trash cans had once published papers in journals they'd never heard of, had taught graduate students who now probably ran departments at universities he could no longer afford to visit? The fire started in the kitchen on the 48th floor at 11:47 p.m. Later, investigators would determine it was electrical, old wiring meeting new demands, a building trying to be something it wasn't designed for. But in those first crucial minutes, all that mattered was that smoke began rising through the ventilation system like poison through veins. Charlotte was still in the boardroom, now empty except for her and the ghost of her ambitions. She'd been staring at the Prometheus Code for 3 hours, trying to find the flaw that had destroyed everything. The numbers blurred together, refusing to reveal their secrets. The first wisps of smoke went unnoticed. The building's alarm system, sophisticated as it was, had a 45-second delay built in to prevent false alarms from burnt microwave popcorn or someone's forgotten dinner. 45 seconds that would prove nearly fatal. Aaron noticed the smoke first. 23 years of engineering training had rewired his brain to see patterns others missed, to spot anomalies in systems. The smoke creeping under the server room door wasn't right. Too dark, too fast, too wrong. He dropped his mop and ran for the manual alarm, pulling it without hesitation. The shriek that followed was immediate and building-wide, a banshee wail that sent everyone's primitive brain into flight mode. On the 49th floor, Charlotte's head snapped up from her laptop. The lights flickered, emergency protocols kicked in, and suddenly the organized corporate world became chaos. Executives who'd spent the evening dissecting her failure now shoved past each other for the exits, their sophisticated veneer stripped away to reveal the panicked animals beneath. "Everyone stay calm!" Charlotte shouted, but her voice was lost in the cacophony. She grabbed her laptop, foolish perhaps, but it contained everything, all their work, all their hope, and joined the stream of bodies heading for the stairwell. That's when she heard it. A voice, young and terrified, coming from the opposite direction. "Help! Someone help me!" Charlotte turned. Through the thickening smoke, she could barely make out the conference room at the hall's end. Someone was still in there. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, to save herself. The stairwell was right there, safety just steps away. But Charlotte Kane hadn't built an empire by following instincts. She'd built it by doing what others wouldn't. She ran toward the voice. The conference room door was jammed. Inside, Emma Chen, a 22-year-old intern who'd stayed late to impress supervisors who'd already forgotten her name, was trapped. The door's electronic lock had engaged when the fire system activated, a safety feature that had become a death trap. "Stand back," Charlotte shouted, though she had no idea what she intended to do. She pulled at the door handle, accomplishing nothing except burning her palms on the heated metal. The smoke was getting thicker. Both women were coughing now, the air becoming something solid and hostile. Charlotte's vision swam, her lungs screaming for oxygen that wasn't there. That's when Aaron appeared. He materialized from the smoke like something out of a myth, his janitor's uniform making him look like a blue-collar angel. Without speaking, he shouldered Charlotte aside and examined the door. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling something from his tool belt, a manual override key that building maintenance carried but executives never knew existed. The lock disengaged with a click that sounded like salvation. Emma tumbled out, gasping, and Aaron caught her before she could fall. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded, though her legs suggested otherwise. "The stairwell's blocked on 48, Aaron said to Charlotte, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Smoke's too thick. We need to go up." "Up?" Charlotte's incredulity broke through her panic. "That's insane!" "The smoke's rising faster through the east stairwell. West side still has clear air above 50. It's basic fluid dynamics." He stopped himself, remembering who he was supposed to be. "Trust me." Charlotte looked into his eyes and saw something she didn't expect. Intelligence. Calculation. The same look she saw in mirrors when solving impossible problems. "Lead the way," she said. Aaron scooped up Emma, who'd stopped responding to questions, and ran. Charlotte followed, her laptop bag banging against her hip with each step. They climbed through smoke that wanted to blind them, through heat that tried to cook them alive, through a building that seemed determined to become their tomb. Aaron's notebook fell from his pocket on the 51st floor. He didn't notice, focused entirely on the girl in his arms, whose breathing was becoming dangerously shallow. But Charlotte saw it fall, saw pages flutter open to reveal not the casual doodles of a bored janitor, but mathematical equations that made her stumble. She grabbed the notebook without thinking, shoving it into her laptop bag as they continued climbing. The 52nd floor was clear, the smoke not yet reaching this high. Aaron kicked open the door to the roof access, and suddenly they were in rain and wind and blessed air. Emma gasped, coming back to consciousness like a drowning woman breaking the surface. Emergency helicopters were already circling, searchlights turning raindrops into falling stars. Within minutes, they were being evacuated. EMTs checking vitals, everyone asking questions that seemed impossibly distant from the reality of almost dying. Charlotte watched Aaron refuse medical attention, insisting they focus on Emma. He stayed with the girl until the ambulance arrived, holding her hand and telling her about his son's drawings, about rockets and mathematics, keeping her conscious with the quiet strength of someone who'd held vigil before. When the chaos finally settled, when statements had been given and Emma was stable at Mercy General, Charlotte found herself alone in her car in the hospital parking lot. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and somehow renewed. She pulled out Aaron's notebook. What she found there changed everything. Page after page of corrections to the Prometheus system. Not just corrections, complete reconceptualizations that transformed their failed approach into something elegant and beautiful. The mathematical equivalent of turning lead into gold. But more than that, solutions to problems they hadn't even tried to tackle yet. Supply chain optimizations that could revolutionize global shipping. AI learning algorithms that bypassed the bottlenecks everyone in the industry accepted as unsolvable. Ideas that weren't just improvements, but paradigm shifts. And in the margins, notes to his son. Remember, Marcus, mathematics is just the language the universe uses to tell its stories. This equation explains why your paper airplane needs those small adjustments we talked about. Your mom would have loved this problem. Charlotte sat in her car until dawn, reading the notebook cover to cover 3 times. Each pass revealed new layers, new insights. It was like finding Da Vinci's private sketchbook, if Da Vinci had been forced to work as a janitor to feed his child. She knew what she had to do. The basement of Meridian Tech Tower smelled like industrial cleaner and broken dreams. The employee lockers lined one wall, each one a small monument to lives lived in the margins. Charlotte had never been down here before. Why would she? CEOs didn't visit the places where the invisible people changed clothes. She found Aaron arriving for his morning shift, having worked all night at his second job, a warehouse across town where he loaded trucks until his hands bled through his work gloves. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face before settling into careful neutrality. "Miss Kane, is there something wrong with the cleaning on 49? "There's something wrong," she said, holding up his notebook, "with the fact that you're pushing a mop when you should be running my R&D department." His face went through several transformations, shock, fear, anger, before landing on something that looked like exhaustion. "I don't know what you mean." MIT, Associate Professor of Applied Mathematics, published 12 papers on optimization theory before disappearing 5 years ago. She'd done her research after leaving the hospital. Dr. Aaron Miles, who supposedly died in a car accident with his wife. Except here you are. "That person did die," Aaron said quietly. "The accident took more than just Sarah." Charlotte studied him. This broken, brilliant man who'd chosen invisibility over explanation. "These solutions could save my company." "Good for you." "They could save thousands of jobs, change an entire industry. That's not my problem anymore." "What if I made it worth your while?" Aaron laughed, bitter and sharp. "You want to buy my notebook? Fine. 50,000. I need a new apartment for my son, one where the heating actually works." "I don't want to buy your notebook," Charlotte said. "I want to hire you." "I have a job." "You have 3 jobs, none of which use a fraction of your capabilities. I'm offering you a chance to be who you really are again." "You don't understand." Aaron's voice cracked slightly. "I can't be that person. I have a son. He needs stability, routine. He needs a father who comes home every night, not one who disappears into equations and forgets to eat, forgets to sleep, forgets everything except the problem in front of him." Charlotte sat down on the bench beside the lockers, her designer suit incongruous against the peeling paint. "Tell me about Sarah." The question clearly surprised him. "Why?" Because I think she's the key to understanding why one of the most brilliant mathematical minds of our generation is mopping floors at midnight. Aaron was quiet for so long Charlotte thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She was a pediatric surgeon. Saved lives every day while I played with abstract theories. When she died. He paused, swallowing hard. Marcus was 2. He didn't understand why Mommy wasn't coming home. I tried to explain, tried to be both parents, tried to keep my position at MIT, but the work consumed me. I'd forget to pick him up from daycare, miss meals, leave him with babysitters for days while I chased solutions to problems that didn't matter. So you quit. I disappeared, changed our names slightly, moved cities, became nobody. Nobody expects brilliance from a janitor. Nobody gets disappointed when the cleaning guy doesn't revolutionize mathematics. Charlotte pulled out her phone, showing him a photo. It was Marcus's drawing, the one with the rocket, which Aaron had dropped during the evacuation. Your son sent this while you were at work. He wants to understand rockets. He wants to learn from his father. He is learning. I teach him. You teach him in fragments, in stolen moments between exhaustion and survival. What if you could teach him properly? What if he could see his father not as someone who hides his light, but as someone who uses it? Aaron looked at the drawing, his fingers tracing the careful lines his son had made. It's not that simple. It never is. But Aaron, that notebook contained solutions worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Solutions that could help thousands of companies optimize their systems, reduce waste, improve lives. Are you really honoring Sarah's memory by keeping that hidden? Don't. His voice turned dangerous. Don't you dare use her memory to manipulate me. I'm not manipulating. I'm asking, what would she want? Aaron stood abruptly, pacing the small space. She'd want Marcus to be happy, safe, loved. And you think that means hiding who you really are? I think it means not becoming the obsessed ghost I was after she died. Charlotte stood too, facing him. What if there was a middle ground? Consultant position. You work from home when Marcus is at school. Flexible hours. You solve the problems that interest you. Ignore the rest. Full benefits, including the kind of health insurance that would ensure Marcus never worries about medical care. Why? Aaron asked. Why do you care so much? Because I've spent 2 years and nearly $1 billion trying to solve problems you fixed in a notebook while mopping floors. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted. Because... She hesitated, then continued. Because I know what it's like to sacrifice everything for success, only to realize success means nothing if you're alone when you achieve it. Aaron looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Not as the CEO, not as someone from a different world, but as a person carrying her own grief. I can't promise to be some corporate superhero, he said finally. I'm not asking for a superhero. I'm asking for honesty, for you to stop pretending to be less than you are. And if I fail, if the solutions don't work in practice, Charlotte smiled. Then you'll fail honestly, as yourself, showing your son that taking risks for the right reasons is worth it even when you lose. Aaron picked up the notebook, running his thumb along its worn spine. Inside were 5 years of midnight thoughts, of problems solved in the quiet hours when the world slept and his mind refused to rest. Solutions born from grief and loneliness and the desperate need to prove his brain still worked even if his heart remained broken. 1 month, he said, trial period. If it doesn't work, I go back to my mop and you forget you ever saw that notebook. Deal. They shook hands there in the basement, surrounded by the detritus of invisible lives. Neither of them knew that this moment would reshape not just Meridian Tech, but the entire technology landscape. They couldn't see the innovations that would spring from Aaron's quiet genius, the lives that would be changed by supply chains optimized to reduce medicine costs in developing nations, the environmental impact of shipping routes refined to mathematical perfection. All they knew was that something had shifted, like an equation finally balancing after years of being unsolvable. Aaron's first day as a consultant was a disaster. He arrived at the Meridian Tech offices at 6 a.m., 2 hours before his official start time, wearing his only suit, the one he'd worn to Sarah's funeral. It still fit, mostly, though the years of physical labor had broadened his shoulders in ways academic life never had. The security guard didn't recognize him without his janitor's uniform and almost didn't let him in despite Charlotte's explicit instructions. When he finally reached the 40th floor, the executive level he'd only ever seen at night when it was empty, he found himself in an alien landscape of glass offices and urgent conversations conducted in corporate speak he'd forgotten how to translate. Charlotte's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, looked him up and down with barely concealed skepticism. "You're the consultant Ms. Kane mentioned? The specialist?" The pause before specialist carried the weight of every doubt Aaron had about this arrangement. "That's me," he said, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Patricia led him to a conference room that had more square footage than his entire apartment. The walls were covered in whiteboards bearing the remnants of Prometheus's failure. Equations crossed out in frustration, flowcharts that led nowhere. The mathematical equivalent of a crime scene. "Ms. Kane will join you shortly. The development team will arrive at 8 for your initial assessment." And then Aaron was alone with the ghosts of other people's mistakes. He studied their work, seeing the logical progression that had led them astray. It wasn't stupidity. These were brilliant people who'd simply started from the wrong assumptions, like building a house on what looked like solid ground, not realizing it was actually a frozen lake that would melt come spring. He picked up a marker, then hesitated. These weren't his whiteboards. This wasn't his space. He was an interloper, a janitor playing dress-up in a dead man's suit. But then he thought of Marcus, of the rocket ship drawing, of his son's voice asking why mathematics mattered, and he began to write. By the time the development team arrived, Aaron had filled 3 whiteboards with corrections, not just pointing out what was wrong, but showing why, and more importantly, showing the path forward. It was like watching someone perform surgery with equations, cutting away diseased logic and replacing it with something healthy and whole. The room filled with skeptical faces. These were MIT graduates, Stanford, PhDs, people who'd been recruited from Google and Apple and Tesla, and here was their CEO telling them to listen to someone nobody had ever heard of. "This is Aaron Miles," Charlotte announced, giving no additional context. "He's going to fix Prometheus." The lead developer, a woman named Dr. Jessica Summers, who'd graduated top of her class from Caltech, crossed her arms. "No offense, but we've had the best minds in the industry look at this. What makes you think—" Aaron turned from the whiteboard. "Line 2847 of your base code. You're using a Gaussian distribution to model something that follows a power law. The error compounds through 17 subsequent functions until by the time you reach the implementation phase, you're off by orders of magnitude." Jessica pulled up the code on her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The room went quiet as she verified his claim. Her face went through several expressions before landing on shock. "He's right. How did we miss this?" "Because you were looking at the trees," Aaron said quietly. "Sometimes you need to see the forest. And you can see the forest." This from another developer, skepticism dripping from every word. Aaron picked up a marker. "Give me 20 minutes. What followed was the kind of intellectual performance that becomes legend in technical circles. Aaron didn't just fix their code. He transformed their entire approach. He showed them how their brute force methods could be replaced with elegant recursive functions that accomplished more with less. He demonstrated how their linear processing could become parallel without the race conditions they'd feared. He turned their failure into a masterclass. But it was too much, too fast. He could see it in their faces. The mixture of awe and resentment that comes when someone makes your months of work look amateur. These were proud people, and he was unintentionally humiliating them. "I need a break," Aaron said suddenly, putting down the marker. He left the room before anyone could respond, finding his way to the stairwell where he'd once hidden to eat lunch in peace during his janitorial shifts. Charlotte found him there 10 minutes later. "That was incredible," she said. "That was a mistake. I just showed up and destroyed their work. They hate me." "They're in shock. There's a difference." "No, there isn't. Not in practice." Aaron rubbed his face. "I don't know how to do this anymore. How to be collegial, political. I just see the problems and the solutions. The human element." He gestured helplessly. Charlotte sat beside him on the concrete steps, her $1,000 heels looking absurd in the industrial stairwell. Do you know why Prometheus failed? Because the mathematical framework, no. It failed because I pushed too hard, moved too fast, didn't listen to the concerns my team raised. I was so focused on the destination that I forgot people need to understand the journey. Aaron looked at her. So what do I do? Teach them. Don't just solve the problems. Show them how to see what you see. Make them partners, not spectators. I was a terrible teacher. My students complained I moved too fast, assumed too much. That was before. Before loss taught you patience. Before raising a child taught you how to explain complex things simply. You're not the same person who left MIT. Aaron considered this. Marcus does ask a lot of questions. And you answer them all, don't you? Patiently, thoroughly, finding ways to make rocket science understandable to a 7-year-old. That's different. He's my son. So make them your students. Not to diminish them, but to elevate them. Show them not just what's wrong, but how to see it themselves next time. Aaron stood straightening his old suit. Okay, but if this goes badly, it won't. He returned to the conference room with a different approach. Instead of lecturing, he asked questions. Instead of solving, he guided. He turned the whiteboards into a conversation, letting the team discover the solutions with his gentle steering. Jessica, what happens if we approach this from a different angle? What if instead of trying to predict all possible outcomes, we let the system learn from actual patterns? She lit up, understanding dawning. We could use reinforcement learning, but structured differently, not trying to force our assumptions, but letting the data reveal its own patterns. Exactly. Show me how you'd structure that. And suddenly it wasn't Aaron versus the team, but Aaron with the team. They worked through lunch, ordering pizza that got cold as they became absorbed in the elegant solutions emerging from their collaboration. By 5 o'clock, they'd outlined a completely new approach to Prometheus. Not just fixing what was broken, but reimagining what was possible. This could actually work, Jessica said, staring at the whiteboards now covered in collective insight. Better than our original vision. It will work, Aaron corrected gently. The mathematics are sound. The logic is clean. You just needed fresh eyes. Where did Charlotte find you? One of the younger developers asked. Aaron hesitated, then decided on honesty. The basement. I was the night janitor here until last week. The room went silent. He could see them trying to reconcile this information with what they'd just witnessed. Jessica was the first to speak. You were cleaning our offices while solving our problems. I had a lot of time to think while mopping. She shook her head. That's actually incredible and humbling. We've been so arrogant, thinking we were the only ones who could understand this work. Intelligence doesn't respect job titles, Aaron said. Some of the brightest people I've known never set foot in a university. They just see patterns others miss. The team exchanged glances, reevaluating not just Aaron, but their own assumptions about where insight comes from. Over the following weeks, Aaron fell into a rhythm. Mornings with Marcus, getting him ready for school, listening to his dreams and questions, days at Meridian Tech, slowly rebuilding Prometheus from the ground up. Evenings back with Marcus, helping with homework, making dinner, being the father he'd almost forgotten how to be. The work was exhausting, but exhilarating. For the first time in 5 years, he felt like himself. Not the broken version or the hidden version, but something new. Someone who could honor both his gift and his grief. The team grew to respect, then admire, then genuinely like him. He brought donuts on Fridays, remembered birthdays, asked about their lives outside code. He was still awkward, still occasionally too intense when seized by a problem, but he was trying, and they could see him trying. Marcus noticed the change too. You smile more now, Dad, he observed one evening over spaghetti. Like when you talk about the rocket math, but all the time. Do I? Yeah, and you don't look so tired. Are you happy? It was such a simple question with such a complex answer. Happy felt like too much to claim, but he was something, engaged, purposeful, alive in ways he'd forgotten were possible. I'm getting there, buddy. I'm getting there. 3 weeks into the reconstruction of Prometheus, the first real test arrived in the form of Harrison Walsh, Meridian Tech's biggest client and the man whose logistics empire stood to lose the most from the system's original failure. He arrived unannounced on a Thursday morning, his presence in the building sending ripples of panic through every floor like drops of blood in water filled with sharks. Aaron was deep in code review with Jessica when Patricia burst into their workspace, her usually composed face flushed with urgency. "Mr. Walsh is here. He's demanding to see the new system. Charlotte needs you in the main conference room, now." The walk to the conference room felt like a funeral march. Aaron could feel the weight of everyone's expectations, their fears, their barely concealed terror that this former janitor they'd gambled on would crumble under the pressure of real scrutiny. He thought about Marcus, about the new apartment he'd just put a deposit on, the one with working heat and windows that actually sealed. Everything hung on the next hour. Harrison Walsh looked exactly like what he was, a man who'd built a shipping empire by being harder and smarter than everyone else in the room, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with hands that had started on loading docks before signing billion-dollar contracts. He didn't stand when Aaron entered, just studied him like a predator evaluating prey. "So you're the miracle worker Charlotte's been hiding," Walsh said, his voice carrying a Texas drawl that didn't soften the edge beneath. "The janitor who's going to save us all." "I'm the mathematician working on the solution," Aaron replied, keeping his voice neutral despite the dismissive tone. Mathematician. Walsh rolled the word around like he was tasting wine, finding it lacking. "Son, I've had dozens of mathematicians tell me their theories. What I haven't had is anyone make those theories work when my trucks are sitting idle and my contracts are bleeding money." Charlotte started to intervene, but Walsh held up a hand. "No, Charlotte. You've had your chance to explain. I want to hear from him. Not the theory, not the mathematics. I want to know how this system will handle real-world chaos. What happens when a hurricane shuts down the port of Houston? When a labor strike freezes the Long Beach terminals? When some idiot crashes a cargo ship and blocks the Suez Canal for a week?" Aaron moved to the whiteboard, but instead of writing equations, he drew a simple diagram. A network of nodes and connections, nothing complex. "Mr. Walsh, you started as a dock worker, correct?" Walsh's eyes narrowed. "Don't try to butter me up, son." "I'm not. I'm establishing context. You understand logistics from the ground up. You know that every sophisticated system is really just patterns of simple decisions multiplied thousands of times. A worker decides which truck to load first. A dispatcher chooses which route to prioritize. A captain determines when to leave port. Get to the point. The original Prometheus system tried to control all those decisions from the top down, like a puppet master with 10,000 strings. My approach doesn't control, it adapts. Each node in the network makes its own optimized decisions based on local conditions, but those decisions ripple through the system in predictable patterns. Aaron drew connections between the nodes, showing how information flowed. Hurricane shuts down Houston. The system doesn't panic or freeze. Each affected node immediately recalculates, rerouting not based on some master plan, but on thousands of micro-adjustments that add up to macro efficiency. "That sounds like chaos," Walsh said, but there was interest in his voice now. "It sounds like nature," Aaron corrected. "How does an ant colony find food?" "No single ant has a map, but put thousands of them together with simple rules. Follow the pheromone trail, strengthen paths that lead to food, abandon paths that don't, and you get something that looks like intelligence, something that adapts to obstacles without anyone needing to understand the whole picture." Jessica pulled up her laptop, connecting it to the main screen. "We can show you. We've run simulations based on your actual shipping data from the last 5 years, including every major disruption." The screen filled with a visualization of Walsh's entire logistics network. Ships, trucks, warehouses, distribution centers, all represented as flowing points of light. It was beautiful in its complexity, like watching the circulatory system of global commerce. "This is your network during normal operations," Jessica explained. "Now watch what happens when we introduce the 2022 Houston hurricane." The port of Houston went dark on the screen. In the original Prometheus simulation they'd run weeks ago, this had caused a cascade failure, the entire system grinding to a halt as it tried to recalculate every route simultaneously. But now, with Aaron's approach, something different happened. The darkness spread initially, but then the surrounding nodes began to pulse brighter, absorbing the displaced traffic in organic waves. Ships rerouted to New Orleans and Mobile. Trucks adjusted their patterns like water finding new channels. The system breathed around the wound. The efficiency drop is only 12%, Jessica continued, compared to the 43% loss you actually experienced during that hurricane. Walsh stood up, moving closer to the screen. Run it again. Show me the port strike from last year. They ran simulation after simulation. Each disruption was met not with rigid, pre-planned responses, but with fluid adaptation. The system learned, evolved, improved with each challenge. It was less like software and more like a living thing. How long until this is operational? Walsh asked, his voice different now, hungrier. 3 months for basic implementation, Charlotte said. 6 for full deployment. Too long. I need something in the field within 6 weeks, or I'm pulling my contracts. The room went cold. 6 weeks was impossible. The coding alone would take twice that, not to mention testing, integration, training. We can do it, Aaron said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. Charlotte's face was a study in controlled panic. Jessica looked like she'd been slapped. We can deliver a pilot program in 6 weeks, Aaron continued. Not the full system, but enough to handle your Pacific routes. Prove the concept works in practice, then scale up. Walsh studied him for a long moment. You're gambling with more than just code here, son. This fails, and Charlotte's company goes under. You understand that? I understand that sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one. Walsh laughed, sharp and surprised. You sound like me 30 years ago, back when I bet everything on my first cross-border route. He turned to Charlotte. 6 weeks, Pacific routes. If it works, I'll not only keep my contracts, I'll double them. After Walsh left, Charlotte cornered Aaron in the hallway. 6 weeks? Have you lost your mind? No? I've found it. Aaron pulled out his notebook, showing her pages of work he'd been doing at home. I've been running the calculations. If we focus just on the core algorithm, strip away all the fancy interfaces and reports, we can have something functional in 6 weeks. Not pretty, but functional. And if it fails, then I go back to mopping floors knowing I tried. But Charlotte, it won't fail. The math is solid. The logic is clean. We just need to trust it. She looked at him, this man who'd hidden in basements and was now ready to bet everything on equations and instinct. You've changed. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just remembering who I was before I got lost. The next 6 weeks were a blur of 18-hour days and midnight revelations. Aaron practically lived at the office, catching naps on the conference room couch, surviving on coffee and whatever food Jessica or Charlotte forced him to eat. The only sacred time was mornings and bedtime with Marcus. He never missed those, no matter how critical the coding crisis. Marcus adapted with the resilience children possess when they understand something important is happening. He did his homework in Aaron's office after school, watching his father work with the same intensity Marcus brought to his drawings. Sometimes Aaron would take breaks to explain what he was doing, turning complex algorithms into stories a 7-year-old could follow. See this part? Aaron pointed to a section of code. It's like teaching the computer to play the largest game of connect the dots ever. Each dot is a truck or a ship, and we're showing it the best way to connect them all. What if a dot disappears? Marcus asked, unconsciously echoing Walsh's concerns. Then the computer finds new ways to connect the remaining dots. Like when you're drawing and your crayon breaks. You don't stop drawing, you just grab a different color. Marcus nodded solemnly, then returned to his math homework while Aaron dove back into code. The team rallied around the impossible deadline. Jessica basically moved into the office too, her dedication matching Aaron's intensity. Even the skeptics from the early days worked with desperate focus, understanding that their futures were tied to these 6 weeks. But it was the night janitor who provided the breakthrough they needed. Miguel had been cleaning the offices for 15 years, moving through the spaces with the same invisible efficiency Aaron once had. He was emptying trash cans while Aaron struggled with a particularly complex routing problem at 2 a.m., 4 days before the deadline. "You're thinking about it wrong," Miguel said quietly. Aaron looked up, surprised. He'd thought he was alone. Miguel continued emptying trash, not making eye contact. I drive for Uber on weekends. The app doesn't think about all possible routes. It just knows the best next turn, then the next, then the next. One decision at a time, always moving forward. Aaron stared at him, then at his code, then back at Miguel. One decision at a time. That's how us regular people navigate, isn't it? We can't see the whole journey, just the next turn. Miguel left, pushing his cart to the next office, leaving Aaron with an epiphany that would save the project. Instead of trying to optimize entire routes at once, Aaron restructured the algorithm to make incremental decisions, each one optimal for that moment, that location, that set of conditions. It was messier than global optimization, but it was also more robust, more adaptable, more real. He coded for 20 straight hours, rewriting the core logic with this new approach. Jessica found him the next morning, passed out on his keyboard, the screen filled with what looked like madness but was actually genius. She ran the test suite. Everything worked. Better than worked. It sang. Aaron, wake up. He jolted upright, keyboard marks on his cheek. Did I break something? No, you fixed everything. The pilot launch was scheduled for a Monday morning, giving them the weekend for final testing. Aaron finally went home Saturday afternoon, collapsing into his own bed for the first time in days. Marcus curled up beside him, not saying anything, just being there. Sometimes comfort doesn't need words. Sunday evening, Aaron's phone rang. It was Charlotte, and she sounded terrified. We have a problem. Richardson's team just sent a cease and desist. They're claiming our algorithm infringes on their patents. David Richardson. Aaron's former colleague at MIT, who'd tried to steal credit for Aaron's work before Sarah's death, had made such petty conflicts irrelevant. Of course he'd surface now, like a vulture drawn to success. He has no claim, Aaron said, though his stomach churned. He has lawyers. And a filing date that predates your notebook entries. That's impossible. I developed this approach independently. I know, but proving that will take months we don't have. If we can't launch tomorrow, Walsh walks and everything collapses. Aaron stood in his small kitchen, looking at Marcus's drawings on the refrigerator. Rockets and mathematical symbols mixed with superheroes and dinosaurs. His son's world, where anything was possible if you just believed hard enough. I'll handle it, Aaron said. How? Richardson wants credit, not justice. I'll give him what he wants. Aaron, no! This is your work, your vindication. It's Marcus's future. That matters more than my ego. He hung up and made another call, one he'd hoped never to make. Richardson answered on the third ring, his voice oily with false surprise. Aaron Miles, I heard you were dead. I heard you were still stealing other people's work, so I guess we both heard wrong. Richardson laughed. Such hostility, and here I thought we could handle this like civilized academics. What do you want, David? Co-creator credit. My name on all publications, patents, and implementations. 30% of any royalties or bonuses. You had nothing to do with this work. Prove it. In court. While your company burns. Aaron closed his eyes, seeing Sarah's face. She'd always hated Richardson, called him a parasite in an expensive suit. But she'd also understood that sometimes you had to feed the parasites to save the patient. 15%. Your name listed as consulting contributor, not co-creator, and you sign an NDA preventing you from discussing the actual development process. 25% co-developer credit. 20 advisory credit, final offer, silence, then send the papers. Aaron worked through the night with Meridian's legal team, crafting an agreement that gave Richardson enough to make him go away while protecting the core integrity of the work. It felt like cutting off pieces of himself, but he signed every page thinking of Marcus, of stability, of a future where his son wouldn't have to hide his intelligence to survive. Monday morning arrived gray and uncertain, Seattle's sky matching the mood in Meridian's offices. The Pacific routing system went live at 9 a.m., taking control of 17 ships, 300 trucks, and 6 distribution centers. For the first hour, everything ran normally. Too normally. The system was so smooth it felt suspicious, like the calm before everything exploded. Then the test came. A labor dispute shut down the port of Tacoma without warning. Half of Walsh's incoming ships were diverted, nowhere to dock, burning fuel and time. Under the old system, this would have required hours of manual recalculation, phone calls, rerouted trucks, chaos. The new system adapted in minutes. Aaron watched the visualization as his algorithm did what it was designed to do. Think like water, flow around obstacles, find new paths. Ships rerouted to Seattle and Portland. Trucks adjusted their schedules. Inventory shuffled between warehouses to compensate for delays. The whole network breathing, adapting, surviving. Efficiency drop is only 7%, Jessica reported, awe in her voice. The old system would have lost 30% minimum. Walsh called an hour later. Aaron could hear grudging respect in his voice. It works. Not pretty, but it works. You've got your contracts, Charlotte. And Miles? You ever want to leave the tech world, I'll hire you to run my operations. Anyone who can think like that understands logistics better than half my executives. The conference room erupted in celebration. Charlotte popped champagne that probably cost more than Aaron's monthly rent. The team that had been skeptical 6 weeks ago now lifted their glasses to toast the janitor who'd saved them all. But Aaron stepped out onto the balcony, needing air, needing space from the victory that felt both earned and hollow. He'd won, but at the cost of sharing credit with someone who'd contributed nothing. He'd succeeded, but success tasted different than he'd imagined. Charlotte found him there, looking out at the city below where thousands of people moved in their own patterns, their own algorithms of survival. You did it, she said. We did it. The team, Miguel's insight, your faith. It wasn't just me. But it started with you. That notebook full of solutions no one else could see. Aaron turned to her. Can I ask you something? Why did you really come looking for me in the basement? You could have just taken the notebook, hired any team to implement it. Charlotte was quiet for a moment, then, because I recognized something in those margins. The notes to your son, the way you'd work through problems and then immediately translate them into something a child could understand. That's not just intelligence, that's love. And I thought maybe someone who could love that deeply could teach my company to care about more than just profit. Did I? Look at them, she gestured to the team inside, still celebrating. 6 weeks ago, they were isolated specialists protecting their territories. Now they're a family. You did that. Not with management techniques or corporate bonding exercises, but by showing them that vulnerability and brilliance aren't opposites, that asking for help isn't weakness. Aaron's phone buzzed. A text from Marcus's school. His son had won the second-grade science fair with a project about optimization patterns in ant colonies, explaining complex theories with drawings and simple experiments. He showed Charlotte the message. She smiled. Like father, like son. He's already smarter than I was at that age. Sometimes I worry that he'll face the same challenges, that brilliance will isolate him, that I won't be enough, that I'll fail him the way I failed after Sarah died. Charlotte touched his arm gently. Aaron, you were grieving. You were human. And look what you've built from that grief. Not just this system, but a relationship with your son that's grounded in both honesty and love. That's not failure. That's the kind of success that actually matters. Inside, Jessica was calling for Aaron to give a speech. The team wanted to hear from the man who'd led them through the impossible. But Aaron hesitated, still uncomfortable with praise, with being visible. They need to hear from you, Charlotte said. Not the mathematician, not the consultant. The person who showed them that excellence can come from anywhere, that janitors can be geniuses, that broken people can build beautiful things. Aaron walked back inside, accepting a glass of champagne he wouldn't drink. The room quieted, waiting. 6 weeks ago, he began, his voice stronger than he'd expected. I was mopping these floors. Not because I wasn't capable of more, but because I was afraid that being capable meant losing myself again in work, losing sight of what mattered. You all taught me that doesn't have to be true, that we can be brilliant and balanced, dedicated and human. He looked at each face, these people who'd become unexpected allies. The system we built isn't perfect. It'll fail sometimes, need adjustments, require constant attention, kind of like us. But it works because it's honest about its imperfections, adapts to them rather than pretending they don't exist. He raised his glass to imperfect systems and the perfectly imperfect people who build them. The toast was echoed with genuine warmth, and Aaron felt something shift inside him. Not healing, that would take longer, but the beginning of integration. The professor he'd been and the father he'd become finally starting to merge into someone new. As the party continued, Aaron's phone rang. Marcus's babysitter, Mrs. Chen, sounded worried. "Mr. Miles?" "Marcus is fine, but he's insisting he needs to talk to you, says it's about the ant project." Aaron took the phone into a quiet corner. "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" "Dad, I've been thinking. The ants in my project, they work together without anyone telling them what to do, right?" "Right. Is that like your computer program? The one that helps the trucks?" Aaron smiled. His son had understood intuitively what it had taken him weeks to explain to engineers. Exactly like that. "So does that mean people are like ants too? All doing our own things, but somehow making patterns?" It was such a profound question from a 7-year-old, the kind that would have made Sarah laugh with delight. Aaron could almost hear her voice. "Our boy's going to change the world, isn't he?" "You know what, Marcus? I think you're absolutely right. We're all following our own paths, but somehow they connect into something bigger." "Like you and me?" "Especially you and me." "Dad, are you happy?" "Like really happy, not just pretending happy?" Aaron looked through the glass at his colleagues, at Charlotte organizing the next phase of development, at the city beyond where his algorithms were already making tiny improvements to thousands of lives. Then he thought about going home to Marcus, to homework and bedtime stories, to a life that finally felt whole, even with its missing pieces. "You know what, buddy? I think I'm getting there. I really think I'm getting there." After Marcus hung up, Aaron stood in the quiet corner for a moment, processing everything that had brought him here. The fire that had revealed his notebook, Charlotte's faith in a janitor's equations, the team that had embraced him despite their initial skepticism, Richardson's greed that had nearly derailed everything, Miguel's simple wisdom that had saved it. Jessica approached with her laptop. "Aaron, you need to see this. The system's performance metrics from the first 12 hours. The numbers were better than their best projections. Efficiency gains of 23%. Fuel savings that would translate to millions in reduced costs and significant environmental benefits. Response times that made their competitors look like they were still using paper maps and rotary phones." "This is going to change everything," Jessica said. "Not just for Walsh, not just for Meridian. Once other companies see these results, everyone will want the system. We're going to transform global logistics." Aaron thought about his notebook, still sitting in his apartment, filled with solutions to other problems. Healthcare optimization, educational resource allocation, agricultural distribution patterns. So many systems that could be improved, so many inefficiencies that could be eliminated. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight, he had a son to get home to, a science fair victory to celebrate, a normal life to live alongside the extraordinary one he'd accidentally built. Charlotte appeared beside them. "The board wants to offer you a permanent position, Chief Innovation Officer. The salary would be substantial." "Can I still work from home when Marcus needs me?" "You can work from the moon if you keep delivering results like this." Aaron laughed, really laughed, for the first time in longer than he could remember. "I'll think about it. Right now, I need to go home. My son won a science fair, and we have a tradition of pizza after victories." "Pizza? After saving a billion-dollar company, you're celebrating with pizza?" "The best victories are the ones you can share with the people who matter most. And Marcus really likes pizza." Charlotte smiled. "You know, for a genius, you're pretty smart." As Aaron gathered his things, several team members stopped him. They wanted to know if he'd be back tomorrow, if he'd help with the next phase, if he'd teach them more about his approach to problem solving. The invisible janitor had become indispensable. "I'll be here," he promised. "We've got a lot more work to do." He took the elevator down to the parking garage, passing through the basement where his locker still held his janitor's uniform. He'd clean it out tomorrow, maybe. Or maybe he'd keep it as a reminder that dignity doesn't come from titles, but from the work itself, whatever that work might be. His old car started on the third try, coughing to life, like it too was surprised by the turn their lives had taken. As he drove home through Seattle's evening traffic, Aaron thought about Sarah, about what she'd say if she could see him now. She'd probably joke about him finally using that expensive MIT education. She'd definitely cry at seeing Marcus following in his footsteps, asking the big questions, seeing the patterns. But mostly, she'd be proud that he'd found his way back. Not to who he was before, but to who he was meant to become. Someone who could honor both his gift and his grief, who could be brilliant without losing himself, who could change the world while still making it home for bedtime. The apartment building looked the same as when he'd left that morning, but Aaron felt like he was seeing it differently. Not as a place of exile, but as a starting point. Tomorrow he'd sign the lease on the new apartment, the one with proper heating and windows that sealed. Tomorrow he'd officially accept Charlotte's offer. Tomorrow he'd begin teaching the team the other solutions in his notebook. But tonight, he was just a father coming home to his son, carrying pizza, and the news that sometimes, against all odds, the impossible becomes possible. Marcus was waiting at the window, his science fair trophy clutched in his hands. When he saw Aaron's car, his face lit up like the sun breaking through Seattle's perpetual clouds. And in that moment, Aaron knew with mathematical certainty that every struggle, every hidden equation, every night spent mopping floors while solving unsolvable problems had been worth it. Because this moment, this joy, this connection between father and son, this was the algorithm that really mattered. The one that couldn't be coded or optimized, only lived and cherished and protected. Aaron climbed the stairs to their apartment, pizza in one hand, laptop bag in the other, carrying both his worlds with equal care. Marcus threw open the door before he could knock, launching himself into his father's arms with the force of a rocket achieving escape velocity. "Dad, I won! I explained everything just like you taught me, and the judges said it was the best project they'd ever seen from a second grader." "Of course you won," Aaron said, holding his son tight. "You're brilliant, just like you?" "Nobody. Better. You're brilliant and brave. You don't hide it." They went inside, spreading the pizza on their small table, Marcus chattering about his presentation, while Aaron listened with the same focus he'd once reserved for complex proofs. This too was mathematics, the calculation of love, the algorithm of attention, the optimization of presence. As they ate, Marcus pulled out a drawing he'd done during school. It showed two figures standing in front of a tall building, holding hands. Above them, he'd written in careful letters, "My dad saves the world with math." "Is that us?" Aaron asked, his throat tight. "Yeah, Mrs. Patterson said to draw our heroes. So I drew you." Aaron looked at the drawing, at his son's earnest face, at the small apartment that had sheltered them through their hardest years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems to solve, new systems to optimize. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfectly, impossibly, miraculously balanced. "You know what, Marcus? You're my hero too." "Really? Really? You reminded me that the best solutions aren't always the most complex ones. Sometimes they're as simple as not giving up, as believing things can get better, as being brave enough to try." Marcus smiled, pizza sauce on his chin, trophy reflecting the kitchen light. "So we're both heroes. The best kind. The kind that save each other." As Seattle settled into night outside their window, father and son finished their pizza, talking about ants and algorithms, about school and systems, about the future that suddenly seemed bright with possibility. The notebook that had started everything sat on the counter, its worn pages holding more solutions that would eventually change industries, save companies, improve lives. But for now, it could wait. For now, there was just this, a father and son, together, celebrating victories both large and small, building their own algorithm of happiness one moment at a time. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility when they moved in 3 weeks later. Marcus ran through the empty rooms, his footsteps echoing off hardwood floors that didn't creak with every step, pressing his face against windows that actually kept the Seattle rain outside where it belonged. Aaron stood in what would be his home office, looking at the space where he could finally work without clearing the kitchen table every meal, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the luxury of having enough. "Dad, look," Marcus called from his bedroom. "I can see the Space Needle from here, and Mount Rainier when it's clear." Aaron joined his son at the window, placing a hand on his shoulder. The view was modest by Seattle standards, but compared to their old apartment's scenic vista of the adjacent building's brick wall, it might as well have been paradise. "We should get a telescope," Marcus said, "for looking at stars and stuff." "We should," Aaron agreed, adding it to the mental list of things they could now afford. Not extravagances, just the normal items that poverty had made seem like impossible dreams. New shoes before the old ones fell apart. Fresh fruit, even when it wasn't on sale. Books bought from stores instead of borrowed from libraries. The doorbell rang, their first visitor in the new place. Charlotte stood there with a bottle of wine and a gift-wrapped box, looking slightly uncomfortable in the residential setting. She'd only ever seen Aaron in corporate contexts or crisis modes, never in the ordinary domestic sphere where he was just a father unpacking boxes. "Housewarming gift," she said, handing over the box. "Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at choosing presents." Marcus tore into the wrapping with 7-year-old enthusiasm, revealing a complex Lego robotics kit that must have cost several $100s. His eyes went wide. "This is the one from the commercial. The one where you can program it to do stuff." "Charlotte, this is too much," Aaron started, but she waved him off. "Consider it an investment in future talent. Besides, Jessica helped me pick it out. She said it was age-appropriate but challenging enough to keep both of you engaged." While Marcus spread the pieces across the living room floor, already sorting them into organized piles that revealed his father's influence, Charlotte and Aaron sat in the kitchen with glasses of wine. The space still felt too large to Aaron, too legitimate for someone who'd spent 5 years making himself small. "The board meeting is tomorrow," Charlotte said. "They want a full presentation on the Prometheus rollout and future applications." "I know, I've been preparing. That's not why I'm here." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "There's something else." Richardson is making noise again. He's been shopping around to tech journalists, claiming he was the real genius behind the system. Aaron felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the old anger that Richardson always provoked. Let him talk. The work speaks for itself. Except he has emails. From your MIT days, exchanges where you discussed early versions of some concepts that evolved into Prometheus. He's crafting a narrative that you stole his ideas. That's ridiculous. Those discussions were about completely different applications. I know, but the media loves a controversy, especially one involving a feel-good story like yours. Janitor Genius makes great headlines, but Janitor Thief sells even more papers. Aaron stood, pacing to the window where the city sparkled below. Somewhere out there, trucks were following routes his algorithms had optimized. Ships were docking in patterns his mathematics had determined. The work was real, tangible, making actual improvements to actual lives. But perception had its own reality, and Richardson had always been better at managing perception. "What do you want me to do?" Aaron asked. "Fight back. Give interviews, tell your story, show the notebooks with dates that prove no." Aaron's voice was firm. "I won't turn my life into a public spectacle. I won't have Marcus growing up seeing his father in some media circus." "Then Richardson wins by default." "Does he?" "The system works. Companies are already lining up to license it. Walsh is saving millions. What does it matter what Richardson says?" Charlotte joined him at the window. "It matters because credit matters. Legacy matters. Marcus should grow up knowing his father revolutionized an industry, not wondering if he stole the ideas." Before Aaron could respond, Marcus called out from the living room, "Dad, something's wrong with the robot." "The program won't load." Aaron went to help, kneeling beside his son to examine the tablet interface. The coding environment was sophisticated but poorly designed, the kind of thing that looked impressive but frustrated actual users. Within minutes, Aaron had identified the problem and was walking Marcus through the solution. "See, the command structure expects a different syntax here," Aaron explained, pointing to the screen. "It's like when you're writing a sentence, you need the words in the right order or it doesn't make sense." Charlotte watched them work together, saw how Aaron translated complex concepts into digestible pieces, how Marcus absorbed the knowledge with hungry intensity. This wasn't just teaching, it was apprenticeship, a master craftsman passing tools to the next generation. Her phone buzzed. Jessica, with urgent news. "Richardson just posted a blog. It's going viral." Charlotte read quickly, her face darkening with each paragraph. Richardson had crafted his narrative skillfully, positioning himself as the overlooked genius whose junior colleague had taken credit for collaborative work. He'd included just enough technical detail to seem credible, just enough personal touches about Aaron's tragic circumstances to seem compassionate rather than vindictive. "Aaron?" she started, but he was deep in explanation with Marcus, showing him how to debug the robot's movement patterns. Father and son worked in perfect synchronization, their minds running on parallel tracks toward the same solution. This, Charlotte realized, was what Richardson could never claim or steal. Not just the algorithms, but the ability to see patterns everywhere, to find elegance in complexity, to teach as naturally as breathing. Richardson could take credit for ideas, but he couldn't replicate the mind that generated them. The next morning, Aaron stood before Meridian Tech's board of directors, wearing his new suit, the first he'd bought since Sarah's funeral. The boardroom felt different from this side of the table. No longer the kingdom of untouchable executives, but just another room full of people trying to make good decisions with imperfect information. He presented the Prometheus results with clinical precision. Efficiency gains across Walsh's network had exceeded 30%. Fuel costs down by $18 million in just 3 weeks. Delivery times improved by an average of 6 hours per shipment. The numbers were irrefutable poetry, each metric a verse in the song of optimization. The applications extend far beyond logistics, Aaron continued, pulling up new slides. Healthcare resource allocation, reducing emergency room wait times by 40%. Educational material distribution, ensuring textbooks reach underserved communities 3 times faster. Agricultural supply chains that could reduce food waste by half. Board member after board member leaned forward, seeing dollar signs and social impact multiplying in their minds. But Richard Blackstone, the lead investor who'd been skeptical from the beginning, raised a hand. "Mr. Miles, we need to address the elephant in the room. David Richardson's claims are irrelevant," Aaron interrupted, surprising himself with his firmness. "The work speaks for itself. Every line of code is documented. Every algorithm is proven. If Dr. Richardson wants to claim credit, let him show his work. Let him stand here and explain the mathematical principles. Let him debug the code when it fails. Let him optimize the system when new challenges arise." But the public perception? The public will forget this controversy in a week, but they'll benefit from these systems for decades. I'm not here to win a popularity contest. I'm here to solve problems. Charlotte watched Aaron with something approaching awe. This wasn't the broken man she'd found in the basement, nor even the tentative genius who'd first stood at these whiteboards. This was someone who'd found his center, who knew his worth regardless of who acknowledged it. After the meeting, Charlotte pulled Aaron aside. "That was brilliant. That was honest. Richardson can have the headlines. I have the work." But Richardson wasn't satisfied with headlines. That evening, as Aaron helped Marcus with homework while simultaneously reviewing code optimizations, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Aaron? It's David." The voice he'd hoped never to hear again slithered through the phone like oil. "What do you want, Richardson?" "To make a deal. A real one this time. I'll retract everything, publicly admit the work was yours, if you give me what I really want. Which is a position at Meridian, co-equal with yours. Let me share in the glory going forward, and I'll stop trying to claim the past." Aaron looked at Marcus, bent over his math homework with the same concentration Sarah used to show during surgery, completely absorbed in solving for X. "No." "No?" "Aaron, be reasonable. I can destroy your reputation. You can try, but here's what you don't understand, David. I don't care about reputation anymore. I care about the work. I care about my son. I care about making things better. You can't destroy any of that. You always were stupidly noble. Fine. But this isn't over." Aaron hung up, feeling lighter somehow. The phone rang again immediately, Richardson calling back, and Aaron simply blocked the number. Some problems weren't worth solving. Over the next weeks, the media storm Richardson had tried to create flickered and faded. A few tech blogs ran with the story, but it was hard to sustain controversy when one party refused to engage. Aaron focused on the work, expanding Prometheus to new clients, refining algorithms, teaching the team advanced optimization techniques. Marcus thrived in their new life. His confidence bloomed as he watched his father step into his power, no longer hiding but not needing to broadcast either. At school, when kids asked what his dad did, Marcus would say simply, "He solves problems," as if that were the most natural job description in the world. One afternoon, Aaron arrived at Marcus's school for a parent-teacher conference, something he'd often missed during his 3-job days. Mrs. Patterson, Marcus's teacher, was a kind woman who'd watched Marcus navigate the loss of his mother and the stress of poverty with remarkable resilience. "Mr. Miles, I wanted to talk to you about Marcus's recent behavior." Aaron's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "No, quite the opposite. He's been helping other students with their math homework, but not just giving them answers. He's teaching them, the same way you must teach him. Yesterday I watched him explain fractions using pizza slices and ant colonies, and suddenly 3 kids who'd been struggling all year understood. I hope that's okay. It's wonderful. But I wanted to suggest something. The district has a program for gifted students, advanced placement, that could challenge him more. I think Marcus is ready." Aaron thought about his own acceleration through school, the social isolation it had brought, the gap it had created between him and his peers. But he also thought about Marcus's natural empathy, his ability to connect with others that Aaron had never possessed at that age. "Can I talk to Marcus about it first?" "Of course. But Mr. Miles, your son is special. Not just intellectually, but in how he uses that intelligence to help others. That's rare. It's rare." That evening, Aaron broached the subject carefully as they built Lego robots together, their dining table covered in instruction manuals and sorted pieces. "Mrs. Patterson thinks you could handle harder schoolwork. Skip ahead, maybe." Marcus considered this seriously, his young face thoughtful. "Would I still see my friends?" "Some classes would be different, but you'd still have lunch and recess with them." "Would I learn the really cool math, the kind you do?" "Eventually, if you wanted to." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then, "Mom was smart too, wasn't she?" The question caught Aaron off guard. They talked about Sarah often, but usually about memories, not characteristics. "Brilliant," Aaron confirmed. "She could look at a patient and see things other doctors missed, like solving puzzles with people instead of numbers. I want to be like both of you, smart but also helping people." "You already are, buddy." "Then I want to try the harder classes. But if I don't like them, can I go back?" "Always. We can always adjust, always adapt. That's what we do, right?" "Like your computer programs?" "Exactly like that." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to Meridian Tech. Harrison Walsh arrived unannounced again, but this time his presence brought excitement rather than fear. The Prometheus system had exceeded every projection, and Walsh's competitors were taking notice. "I've got a proposition," Walsh announced, gathering Aaron, Charlotte, and the senior team. "My biggest rival, Chen Logistics, wants to license your system. They're offering $50 million for non-exclusive rights." The room went silent. $50 million would transform Meridian Tech, provide resources for development that Charlotte had only dreamed of. "There's a catch," Walsh continued. "They want Aaron to personally oversee the implementation. 6 months in Shanghai." Aaron's chest tightened. 6 months away from Marcus, just when they'd found their rhythm, just when stability had become real. "That's not possible," Aaron said immediately. "Aaron, think about this," Charlotte urged. "This could change everything. We could hire the best talent, develop systems for healthcare, education, all those applications you envisioned. I have a son. I'm not leaving him for 6 months." Walsh studied Aaron with those sharp eyes that had built an empire. "What if we brought him with you? International school in Shanghai, cultural experience, seeing his father change global commerce. You want me to uproot a 7-year-old who's just found stability? I want you to consider that stability isn't just about place. It's about purpose, and your purpose might require some movement." Aaron stood to leave, but Walsh's next words stopped him. "Your wife was Dr. Sarah Miles, wasn't she? The pediatric surgeon?" Aaron turned slowly. "How did you know that?" "I remember the news story. She was coming back from a medical conference when the accident happened. She'd just presented a paper on improving pediatric surgical outcomes in developing nations." Walsh's voice softened. My granddaughter was born with a heart defect in Vietnam. The techniques your wife developed saved her life. The room went absolutely still. Aaron felt the ground shift beneath him, connections forming he'd never expected. Sarah's work is still saving lives, Walsh continued. Her techniques are used globally now. But implementation is uneven. Some hospitals have the resources to use them properly, others don't. He paused. The logistics system you built could fix that. Medical supply distribution, surgical equipment routing, training material delivery. You could complete what she started. Aaron sank back into his chair, overwhelmed. Sarah had always dreamed of making her techniques universally accessible, of ensuring that a child's zip code didn't determine their surgical outcomes. It had been her driving passion, the thing that got her on that plane despite Aaron begging her to skip just one conference, to stay home just one weekend. I need to think, Aaron managed. Take your time. But Aaron, sometimes the best way to honor someone's memory is to finish their work. That night, Aaron sat with Marcus looking through photo albums they rarely opened. Pictures of Sarah holding newborn Marcus, of family trips to the coast, of ordinary moments that had seemed infinite in their possibility until they suddenly weren't. She was beautiful, Marcus said, tracing his finger over a photo of Sarah in her surgical scrubs, exhausted but smiling after a successful operation. Inside and out, Aaron agreed. Do you miss her? Every day. Me too, even though I don't remember much. Aaron pulled his son close. You know what she wanted most? To help sick kids get better, no matter where they lived or how much money their families had. That's a good thing to want. It is. And Marcus, there might be a way for us to help finish what she started, but it would mean traveling to China for a while, living there while I set up systems that could help hospitals like the ones Mom wanted to reach. Marcus was quiet, processing this with his characteristic seriousness. Would we come back? Always. This is our home, but sometimes to do important things, you have to go where the work is. Like Mom did? The parallel hit Aaron hard. Sarah traveling for conferences, for surgeries, for the greater good while he'd wanted her to stay home, to be safe, to choose family over calling. Yes, he said quietly. Like Mom did. Then I think we should go. But can we bring the Lego robots? Aaron laughed, tension breaking. We can bring whatever you want. The announcement of Aaron's temporary relocation sent ripples through Meridian Tech. Jessica took it hardest, worried about managing the system without its architect. But Aaron spent the next 2 weeks creating detailed documentation, recording training videos, building fail-safes that would let the team operate independently. You're teaching us to not need you, Jessica observed during one late-night session. I'm teaching you to think like me. There's a difference. What if Richardson causes more trouble while you're gone? Then you'll handle it. You understand the work now. You can defend it as well as I can. She wasn't convinced, but Aaron had learned something about trust in recent months. Sometimes the best optimization was delegation, letting systems run without constant intervention. The night before their departure, Charlotte threw a small farewell party at her downtown condo. The Meridian team came, along with Walsh and, surprisingly, Miguel the janitor, who'd provided the crucial insight about incremental decisions. You're really him? Miguel asked Aaron. The one who was mopping floors with me? Still am, in a way. Just mopping up different messes now. Miguel laughed. My wife didn't believe me when I said I helped design the system. But I told her, intelligence doesn't care about job titles. You were right about the one turn at a time approach. It saved everything. Nah, you saved everything. I just reminded you that complicated doesn't always mean better. As the party wound down, Charlotte pulled Aaron onto the balcony. The Seattle skyline sparkled below, city lights creating their own constellation patterns. You don't have to do this, she said. The Chen deal will happen either way. It's not about the deal anymore. It's about finishing something. Sarah started the medical work. I can complete the infrastructure. Together, even now, we're still a team. That's beautiful, Aaron. She'd be proud. I hope so. I spent so long being angry that she chose the work over safety, chose helping others over staying with us. But now I understand. Some things are bigger than individual wants. And Marcus understands too? He's 7. He understands that we're going on an adventure and he can learn Mandarin and see the Great Wall. The deeper meaning can wait. Charlotte handed him an envelope. Open this in Shanghai. What is it? A reminder that you have a home to come back to. That this isn't exile or escape, just expansion. The next morning, Aaron and Marcus stood at the airport gate, matching backpacks in nervous excitement. Marcus had his tablet loaded with Mandarin learning apps, already practicing basic phrases with determined focus. You ready for this, buddy? Aaron asked. Dad, we're going to help sick kids like Mom wanted. Of course I'm ready. As they boarded the plane, Aaron thought about circles and cycles, about how sometimes moving forward meant returning to origins. Sarah had died traveling for her work, and now Aaron was traveling to complete it. The poetry of it might have been crushing if not for Marcus beside him, representing the future rather than the past. The plane lifted off, Seattle shrinking below until it was just patterns of light and shadow, systems within systems, all interconnected in ways that only became visible from sufficient height. Aaron opened his notebook, the same one that had started everything, and began sketching new algorithms. Medical supply routes, hospital resource allocation, surgical scheduling optimization. Each equation was a love letter to Sarah, a promise to Marcus, a commitment to the idea that mathematics could genuinely improve lives. Richardson could claim credit, journalists could spin narratives, but none of that changed the fundamental truth. The work mattered. Dad, Marcus said, looking out the window as they broke through the clouds into brilliant sunlight. Do you think Mom can see us? Aaron considered his son's question with the same seriousness he brought to complex proofs. I think she exists in what we do, in the surgeries her techniques enable, in the problems we solve, in the way we help others. So yes, in a way, she sees everything. Marcus nodded, satisfied with this integration of emotion and logic. Then he pulled out his robotics kit, beginning to build something new from the pieces he'd brought, creating order from chaos 30,000 feet above the Pacific. Aaron watched his son work, seeing Sarah's intensity and his own pattern recognition combining into something entirely new. The future was uncertain. Shanghai would bring challenges, implementation would have obstacles, Richardson would probably cause more trouble. But for now, there was just this: a father and son, traveling together, carrying forward the work of someone they'd lost but would never truly lose. The notebook in Aaron's lap fell open to a page from 5 years ago, one of his first entries after Sarah's death. The mathematics were rough, angry almost, full of corrections and crossed-out sections. But at the bottom, in different ink from a different day, he'd written, "The solution exists. I just can't see it yet." Now finally he could see it, not just the mathematical solution, but the life solution. How to be brilliant without losing humanity. How to honor the past while building the future. How to optimize not just systems, but existence itself. As the plane carried them toward new challenges and opportunities, Aaron closed the notebook and opened his laptop. There was work to do, problems to solve, lives to improve. But first, he helped Marcus debug his robot's code, teaching and learning in equal measure, their minds working in harmony as they flew toward tomorrow. The Shanghai implementation would succeed beyond all projections. The medical applications would save thousands of lives. Richardson would eventually exhaust himself with bitterness and fade into irrelevance. Charlotte would build Meridian Tech into a global force for optimization and improvement. Jessica would become a leader in her own right, carrying forward the principles Aaron had taught. But all of that was still to come. For now, there was just the journey, the work, the connection between father and son that no algorithm could calculate, but that formed the core of everything that mattered. Marcus looked up from his robot, smile bright with discovery. "Dad, I figured it out." The solution was simpler than I thought. Aaron smiled back, ruffling his son's hair. "It usually is, buddy. It usually is." Shanghai rose from the morning mist like a mathematical proof made physical, its towers reaching toward solutions in the sky. Aaron pressed his face against the taxi window as they drove from Pudong Airport, watching the city's patterns unfold. Traffic flows, pedestrian streams, the subtle algorithms of 8 million people navigating shared space. Beside him, Marcus clutched his tablet, wide-eyed at the urban density that made Seattle look like a small town. "It's bigger than I imagined," Marcus whispered, his voice carrying the awe of a child discovering the world extended beyond his comprehension. Their apartment was in the French Concession, a tree-lined neighborhood where colonial architecture met modern ambition. Chen Logistics had arranged everything with the efficiency Aaron had come to expect from a company that moved half of China's exports. The space was 3 times larger than their Seattle home, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Fuxing Park, where elderly residents were already practicing Tai Chi in synchronized formations that reminded Aaron of optimized movement patterns. "Look, Dad," Marcus pointed to the park. "They're all moving together but separately, like your ant colony algorithm." Aaron smiled at his son's intuition. Even in this foreign place, Marcus saw mathematics everywhere, translated the world into patterns they both understood. The international school was a 5-minute walk away, its campus a mixture of Chinese tradition and Western educational philosophy. The principal, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, no relation to the logistics company, greeted them in accented but perfect English. "Mr. Miles, we're honored to have Marcus join us. I understand he's gifted in mathematics." "He sees patterns," Aaron said simply. "Sometimes before I do." Dr. Chen smiled. "Then he'll fit right in. Half our students are the children of engineers and scientists. They speak the same language even when their words are different." Marcus was assigned a buddy for his first day, a girl named Lily, whose parents worked for a biotech firm. She spoke English, Mandarin, and French with equal fluency and immediately began teaching Marcus essential Mandarin phrases with the serious intensity of a UN translator. "Jie means thank you," she explained, "but you have to get the tone right or you're saying something else entirely." Watching Marcus navigate this new world with curiosity rather than fear, Aaron felt Sarah's presence strongly. She would have loved this, would have seen the opportunity for growth rather than the disruption of comfort. Chen Logistics headquarters occupied 40 floors of a building that twisted slightly as it rose, an architectural double helix that probably cost more in engineering than most companies earned in a year. The CEO, William Chen, met Aaron in a boardroom that overlooked the Huangpu River, where cargo ships moved in patterns Aaron was already analyzing. "Mr. Miles, your reputation precedes you," Chen said in crisp English. "Walsh speaks of you like you're some kind of logistics prophet. I just see inefficiencies and fix them. Modest, but modesty won't solve our problems." Chen pulled up a holographic display, technology that made Meridian's setup look quaint. "We move 40% of goods between Asia and the West. 1% improvement in efficiency saves us millions daily. Walsh says you achieved 30% improvement. Different system, different constraints. Your operation is more complex. Can you do it?" Aaron studied the visualization, seeing the flaws immediately. Bottlenecks in Singapore, redundant routes through Malaysia, customs delays that compounded into cascade failures. "Give me 2 weeks to observe, a month to design, 3 months to implement. You'll see 20% improvement minimum." Chen leaned back, studying Aaron. "You don't negotiate, do you? No inflated promises, no corporate dancing. I'm a mathematician. Numbers don't lie." "Refreshing. Your team arrives tomorrow?" Aaron shook his head. "No team. I work better alone initially. Once I understand your system, I'll train your people." The lone genius approach. The focused observation approach. Too many voices early on create noise that obscures patterns. Chen stood, extending his hand. 6 months, Mr. Miles. Show me something beautiful." The first 2 weeks, Aaron immersed himself in Chen Logistics operations. He spent nights in their command center, watching cargo flow across screens like blood through digital veins. Days, he visited ports and warehouses, talking to dock workers and truck drivers, learning the human elements that no algorithm could capture. One evening, exhausted from 18 hours of observation, he returned to find Marcus teaching Lily and 3 other classmates his ant colony optimization theory using sugar cubes and toy trucks on their living room floor. "See, each truck is like an ant," Marcus explained with his father's patience. "They don't know the whole map, but they know if the path they took was good or bad. Then the next truck knows to follow the good paths more." But what if the good path becomes bad? Lily asked. Like when there's traffic? Marcus looked up at his father, seeking help with this advanced concept. The pheromone trails fade, Aaron said, joining the children on the floor. Good paths that stop being good lose their strength, and the ants, or trucks, explore new routes. Can we program this? One of the boys asked, pulling out a tablet. And suddenly Aaron was teaching not just Marcus, but a group of 7-year-olds from around the world, their minds uncluttered by assumptions about what was impossible. They grasped concepts that had taken his MIT students weeks to understand, perhaps because they hadn't yet learned to overcomplicate things. Later, after the other children had gone home, Marcus sat with Aaron on their balcony, the Shanghai skyline glittering like a circuit board. "Mom would have liked it here," Marcus said unexpectedly. "What makes you say that?" "All these different people trying to help each other, like her conferences, but every day." Aaron pulled his son closer. Sometimes Marcus's emotional intelligence stunned him, this ability to feel the truth of situations beyond his years. "She would have," Aaron agreed. "She believed in connection across differences." "Is that why we're really here? Not just for the computers, but for her? We're here for all of it. The work, her memory, our future. Sometimes things align in ways that feel like fate, even when you don't believe in fate." "I believe in patterns," Marcus said solemnly, "and this feels like a pattern, completing." The next morning brought Aaron's first real challenge at Chen Logistics. A typhoon had shut down ports along the southern coast, disrupting carefully planned routes. The conventional response would be to reroute everything through northern ports, but Aaron saw a different solution. "Don't move the cargo," he told the crisis team. "Move the timing." "What do you mean?" the operations director asked. Aaron pulled up the scheduling system. "You're treating this like a spatial problem when it's temporal. Instead of redirecting ships, delay them strategically. Hold them in pattern at their current locations. The storm will pass in 18 hours. The delay costs less than the rerouting." But the contracts specify delivery times, which include force majeure clauses for weather. You lose nothing by waiting, everything by panicking. They followed his advice reluctantly. 18 hours later, when the ports reopened, Chen's cargo flowed through while their competitors' rerouted ships created massive congestion in the northern ports. William Chen called Aaron personally. "That decision saved us $17 million. "How did you see it?" "I didn't fight the storm. I worked with it." Very Chinese thinking for an American mathematician. Truth doesn't have a nationality. Word of Aaron's typhoon solution spread through the logistics community. Other companies began reaching out, offering contracts that would have made him wealthy beyond imagination. But Aaron ignored them all, focused on the work at hand and the deeper mission underneath, creating infrastructure that could move medical supplies as efficiently as consumer goods. 3 weeks into the Shanghai assignment, Aaron received an unexpected video call from Jessica. Her face was tight with worry. "Richardson's back," she said without preamble. "He's filed a patent dispute. Claims the entire Prometheus system was based on his theoretical framework." "That's impossible. The patents were filed under Meridian. He's not disputing the patents. He's claiming theft of intellectual property preceding the patents. Aaron, he has documents, old ones, from MIT. Aaron felt the familiar cold grip of Richardson's manipulations. "What documents?" "Grant proposals. Ones you both signed as co-investigators. He's claiming all subsequent work derived from that collaborative research. Those grants were for completely different projects. I know, Charlotte knows. But legally, it's murky. He's demanding either recognition as co-creator or a $30 million settlement." Aaron stood, pacing to the window where Shanghai sprawled endlessly. He'd come here to escape this, to focus on work that mattered rather than ego battles that didn't. "Let me talk to Charlotte." Charlotte appeared on screen, looking exhausted. "Aaron, I'm sorry. I thought we'd handled this." "It's not your fault. Richardson's like a virus. He keeps mutating to survive." "What do you want to do?" Aaron thought about Marcus in the next room, doing homework while video chatting with his Seattle friends, maintaining connections across the Pacific through technology his father had helped optimize. "Give me 24 hours. That night, Aaron did something he'd never done before. He reached out to his old MIT colleagues. One by one, he video called professors who'd witnessed Richardson's pattern of intellectual theft over the years. Dr. Jennifer Martinez, now at Stanford, Professor Yanping Liu at Tsinghua, Dr. Robert Thornton at Oxford. Each had a Richardson story, papers where he'd added his name after contributing nothing, grad students whose work he'd claimed, ideas he'd presented as his own after hearing them in casual conversation. We all knew, Jennifer said wearily, but what could we do? He was politically protected, had tenure, knew how to work the system. What if we could do something now? Aaron asked. What are you proposing? The truth. All of it. On record. It took 3 days to coordinate, but eventually Aaron had 12 testimonies from respected academics, all detailing Richardson's history of intellectual theft. Charlotte's legal team compiled them into a devastating document that painted Richardson not as a wrong genius, but as a serial plagiarist. Charlotte called Richardson with Aaron on the line. David, we need to discuss your claim. Finally ready to negotiate? Richardson's voice oozed false confidence. No. Ready to give you one chance to withdraw everything. Publicly admit the work was Aaron's, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and disappear. Or what? Or we release 12 academic testimonies about your history of stealing credit. Your reputation won't survive it. Silence. Then, you're bluffing. Charlotte sent him the document. The silence stretched longer this time. This is extortion, Richardson finally said, but his voice had lost its edge. This is consequence, Aaron interjected, something you've avoided for too long. I'll destroy you for this, Miles. No, David. You'll withdraw your claims, and you'll do it quietly. Because if you don't, everyone will know what you really are. Not an overlooked genius, just a thief with a PhD. The line went dead. 2 hours later, Richardson's lawyer sent withdrawal papers. The claims were dropped, the controversy ended, and Richardson retreated into whatever hole wounded narcissists crawled into when their games finally failed. It's over, Charlotte told Aaron. Really over this time. But Aaron knew better. Richardson was defeated, but the work continued. The real victory wasn't in winning ego battles, but in building systems that made such battles irrelevant. The next phase of the Chen Logistics project required Aaron to visit ports across China, Shenzhen, Ningbo, Qingdao. Marcus came along during school breaks, turning each trip into an adventure. They climbed the Great Wall on a foggy morning when the ancient stones seemed to disappear into clouds. They ate street food in night markets where Marcus practiced his improving Mandarin with vendors who laughed at his pronunciation but appreciated his effort. Dad, Marcus said one evening as they watched sunset from their hotel room in Qingdao, I want to show you something. He pulled out his tablet, opening a program he'd been working on. It was a simple logistics game, but the underlying logic was sophisticated. Players managed supply chains, dealt with disruptions, optimized routes. It was essentially a gamified version of Aaron's work. Lily's dad helped with the coding, Marcus explained. But the math is mine. Well, yours, but I made it into a game. Aaron studied the code, seeing his algorithms transformed into something playful yet educational. His 7-year-old son had intuitively grasped that the best way to teach complex concepts was to make them engaging. This is brilliant, Marcus. You think other kids would like it? I think adults would like it. This could teach logistics concepts better than any textbook. Marcus beamed. Maybe we could make it together, like a real father-son project. I'd love that. They spent the rest of the evening refining the game, Aaron suggesting mathematical improvements while Marcus focused on user experience. It was collaboration in its purest form, two minds building on each other's strengths. Meanwhile, the Chen Logistics implementation was exceeding projections. The system Aaron designed didn't just optimize existing routes, but suggested entirely new corridors, partnerships that seemed counterintuitive but proved brilliantly efficient. Ships that had sailed half-empty now carried mixed cargo from multiple companies. Warehouses that had sat idle during off-seasons became temporary distribution hubs for medical supplies. It was this last innovation that caught the attention of Dr. James Morrison from the World Health Organization. He arrived in Shanghai unannounced, finding Aaron through Charlotte's connection. Mr. Miles, I understand you're building logistics systems with medical applications. It's part of the broader optimization, yes. I represent a coalition trying to improve vaccine distribution in Southeast Asia. We lose 30% of vaccines to logistics failures, poor refrigeration, delayed transport, inefficient routing. Aaron's attention sharpened. This was exactly the kind of problem Sarah would have cared about. 30% is criminal. It's deadly. Children die from preventable diseases because we can't get vaccines to them in time. Your wife understood this. She mentioned it in her last paper, the need for medical infrastructure that matched medical innovation. Aaron felt his chest tighten. You knew Sarah? We met at a conference in Bangkok. 6 months before the accident. She was passionate about surgical access, but we discussed broader medical logistics. She said, Morrison paused, pulling out his phone to read from old notes. She said, my husband could solve this with mathematics if someone would just ask him to. The words hit Aaron like a physical blow. Sarah had seen this possibility, had known he could help even when he was lost in abstract theories that seemed disconnected from real-world impact. What do you need? Aaron asked, his voice rough. A system that can track vaccine temperatures across supply chains, optimize routes for time-sensitive biologics, and predict where outbreaks might occur to pre-position supplies. When do you need it? Honestly? 5 years ago, but I'll settle for as soon as possible. Aaron opened his notebook, the same one that had started everything, and began sketching. Within minutes, he'd outlined a framework that could revolutionize medical distribution. Morrison watched with growing excitement. This could save thousands of lives, tens of thousands. Then we'd better get started. The collaboration with WHO added another layer to Aaron's work in Shanghai. Days were spent on commercial logistics, evenings on medical distribution, nights teaching Marcus and working on their game. It should have been exhausting, but Aaron felt energized in a way he hadn't since before Sarah's death. Marcus thrived in the international environment, his Mandarin becoming conversational, his friend group expanding to include children from 20 different countries. He was becoming a global citizen in ways Aaron never could have planned. One evening, William Chen invited Aaron and Marcus to his home for dinner. The house was modern but incorporated traditional Chinese elements: moon gates, a central courtyard with a koi pond, scrolls with calligraphy that Chen translated as efficiency in all things. Your son is famous at the international school, Chen told Aaron. My daughter says he's teaching advanced mathematics to third graders. He inherited his mother's teaching ability, Aaron replied, and his father's genius. The system you've built for us is remarkable. Our competitors are years behind. It's just optimization. Chen laughed. You say that like optimization isn't revolution. Every efficiency multiplied across our scale changes the world economy. After dinner, while Marcus played with Chen's children in the courtyard, Chen took Aaron to his study. Ancient texts lined one wall, computer screens the other, past and future in dialogue. I have a proposition, Chen said. Stay in China. Permanently. Build the medical system from here, where manufacturing and need intersect. I can't. Marcus needs his father fulfilled, and you're most fulfilled when the work matches the mission. Sarah's mission. Aaron was quiet, watching his son through the window, seeing how naturally he moved between languages and cultures. I'll consider it, Aaron said finally. That's all I ask. But Aaron, opportunity and obligation sometimes arrive together. This might be both. The conversation stayed with Aaron as weeks turned into months. The commercial system was fully operational, exceeding every metric. The medical distribution framework was taking shape, with pilot programs in Cambodia and Laos showing dramatic improvements in vaccine delivery. But it was a video call from Seattle that changed everything. Jessica appeared on screen, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood the entire Meridian team, and Charlotte, and surprisingly, Miguel. Aaron, Charlotte began, we have news. Walsh's competitors have formed a consortium. They want to license Prometheus globally. The deal would make Meridian one of the largest logistics software companies in the world. That's wonderful. But they have a condition, Jessica interrupted. You have to be part of it. not just as architect, but as ongoing chief innovation officer. They won't sign without you. Aaron felt the weight of decision. Shanghai had become comfortable, the work meaningful, Marcus happy. But Seattle was home, was family, was the place Sarah was buried. When do you need an answer? The consortium meets in 2 weeks. Aaron, this is what we built toward, the chance to optimize not just one company or country, but global systems. After the call ended, Aaron found Marcus on the balcony, building with magnetic tiles he'd bought at a Shanghai toy store. The structures he created were complex but balanced, each piece supporting others in networks of interdependence. We might need to go back to Seattle soon, Aaron said carefully. Marcus looked up. For a visit? Maybe permanently. His son considered this with characteristic seriousness. I'll miss Lily and my friends here. I know, change is hard, but change is how things improve, right? Like your algorithms, they adapt to new information. When did you become so wise? I learned from watching you, Dad. You adapted after Mom died. You changed from hiding to helping. Maybe going back is just another adaptation. That night, Aaron walked through Shanghai alone, following the random walk algorithm he'd taught Marcus, at each intersection, choosing direction based on interest rather than destination. The city revealed itself in layers, street vendors selling breakfast to night shift workers, elderly people practicing calligraphy with water on sidewalks, young entrepreneurs discussing startups in 24-hour cafes. In Fuxing Park, he found the Tai Chi practitioners beginning their morning routine despite it being past midnight. An elderly man noticed him watching and gestured for him to join. Aaron tried to follow the movements, his mathematical mind appreciating the optimization of motion, the efficiency of energy transfer. You think too much, the man said in accented English. Feel the pattern, don't analyze it. It was advice that applied beyond Tai Chi. Aaron had spent months analyzing decisions when perhaps the answer was simpler. Feel the pattern of his life, follow its natural flow rather than trying to optimize every variable. He returned to the apartment to find Marcus awake, working on their game. Couldn't sleep? Aaron asked. I was adding a new feature. Medical supply routes, like you're building for the vaccines. Aaron sat beside his son, watching him code with increasing sophistication. You know we're doing important work here. I know, but Dad, we can do important work anywhere. The work isn't the place, it's us. The next morning, Aaron called Charlotte. We'll come back, but on conditions. Name them. I continue the medical distribution work, who gets priority access to our systems at cost, and Marcus gets to stay in advanced placement programs that challenge him. Done, done, and done. Aaron, you're building something bigger than any of us imagined. Commercial success funding, humanitarian impact. She'd say stop talking and start implementing. Charlotte laughed. 2 weeks. We'll have everything ready. The remaining time in Shanghai passed quickly. Aaron trained Chen's team on system maintenance, documented everything with obsessive detail, and established protocols for remote consultation. The medical distribution pilot expanded to Vietnam and Myanmar, early results showing 40% reduction in vaccine spoilage. Marcus organized a farewell party at school, teaching his classmates one final lesson: how to stay connected across distance using the technology their parents were building. Physical distance doesn't break friendships, he told them solemnly. Only forgetting does. Lily gave Marcus a journal at the airport. For writing down patterns, you see, she explained, so you can teach them to me when you visit. I'll visit, Marcus promised, or you'll visit us. The world is smaller than it looks. On the plane back to Seattle, Aaron opened the envelope Charlotte had given him months ago. Inside was a simple note. Home isn't a place. It's the people who see your worth, the work that fulfills your purpose, and the love that survives loss. You carry home with you. Below the note was a photo from the team celebration after Prometheus's first success. Aaron stood in the center, Marcus beside him, surrounded by people who'd become family through shared struggle and triumph. In the background, barely visible, was the janitor's closet where this journey had begun. Dad, Marcus said, looking at the photo, were you sad when you were mopping floors? Sometimes. But if you hadn't been mopping, you wouldn't have found the answer. What do you mean? You had time to think, to see patterns others missed because they were too busy being important. Maybe being invisible was actually your superpower. Aaron hugged his son, this remarkable child who understood that strength could come from vulnerability, that falling could teach you to fly. You know what your superpower is? Aaron asked. Math? Seeing the best in everything, in me, in our story, in what comes next. As the plane descended towards Seattle, Mount Rainier emerged from clouds like a mathematical constant, unchanging, reliable, true. The city spread below in familiar patterns, but Aaron saw them differently now. Not as constraints, but as possibilities. Not as the place where he'd lost everything, but as the foundation for what he'd built. The notebook in his lap was almost full now, years of solutions and observations filling pages that had once seemed infinite. But Marcus had his own notebook now, and someday he'd fill many more. The work would continue, evolve, improve. Aaron thought about Sarah, about how she'd worried that their son might inherit too much intelligence and not enough wisdom. She needn't have worried. Marcus had both, plus something neither parent had possessed, the ability to find joy in the journey, not just the destination. Ready to go home? Aaron asked as the plane touched down. We're already home, Marcus replied, squeezing his father's hand. We just landed in Seattle. The Seattle rain felt different after Shanghai's humid embrace, cleaner somehow, as if the city had washed itself in preparation for their return. Aaron stood in the Meridian Tech lobby, Marcus beside him, watching the familiar faces transform with recognition and joy. Jessica ran forward first, abandoning professional decorum to wrap them both in a hug that smelled of coffee and circuit boards. You actually came back, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I thought Shanghai would steal you. Seattle's gravitational pull is stronger than you'd think, Aaron replied, but his eyes were already scanning the transformed workspace. In 6 months, Meridian had doubled in size. New faces mixed with familiar ones, all wearing the quiet confidence of a team that had found its rhythm. Charlotte emerged from a conference room, her power suit impeccable, but her smile genuinely warm. Welcome home, both of you. Marcus, you've grown 3 inches at least. 2 3/4, Marcus corrected with precision that made everyone laugh. The reunion was interrupted by an unexpected voice. So the prodigal genius returns. Aaron turned to find David Richardson standing in the lobby, looking diminished somehow, his expensive suit unable to hide the defeat in his shoulders. Security was already moving toward him, but Charlotte held up a hand. What are you doing here, David? She asked, ice in her voice. I came to apologize. The words seemed to physically pain him, and to ask for something I don't deserve. You're right, you don't deserve anything, Jessica interjected, but Aaron stepped forward. Let him speak. Richardson's hips trembled slightly as he pulled out a folder. My daughter, Emily. She's 7, same age as your son. She was diagnosed with a rare metabolic disorder. The treatment exists, but getting the medications to her consistently, with the precise timing required. The current systems can't handle it. He opened the folder to show medical documents, prescription schedules that looked more like engineering specifications than treatment plans. Every dose has to be temperature controlled, delivered within a 2-hour window, adjusted based on real-time biomarkers. I've tried everything, spent everything. The doctors say without perfect adherence to the protocol, she has maybe a year. The lobby went silent. Even Jessica's anger seemed to evaporate in the face of a father's desperate fear. You want me to design a personal medical logistics system, Aaron said quietly. I want you to save my daughter. I know I have no right to ask. I tried to destroy you, to steal credit for work I could never have done. But you're the only one who can solve this. Aaron looked at Marcus, who was studying Richardson with those penetrating eyes that saw past surface to pattern. Everyone deserves help, Marcus said simply. Even people who weren't nice before. Richardson's composure finally cracked. I'll give you everything. All my patents, all my research, public acknowledgement that the Prometheus system was entirely your work. Just please. I don't want your patents, Aaron said, or your acknowledgement, but I'll help Emily, not for you, for her. Richardson sank into a lobby chair, overwhelmed. Thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is complex. I'll need full medical records, consultation with her doctors, real-time biometric access. Erin's mind was already working, seeing the problem as mathematics rather than personal history. Jessica, can you set up a medical logistics workspace? We'll need to integrate with hospital systems, pharmaceutical suppliers, home monitoring devices. Already thinking 3 steps ahead, Jessica said with admiration. Give me 2 hours. As Richardson left with security escort and a list of required information, Charlotte pulled Erin aside. You didn't have to do that. After everything he did, a child's life transcends adult grievances. Sarah would never forgive me if I let a child suffer to satisfy a grudge. You're a better man than most. No, I just have a 7-year-old son who reminds me what actually matters. The consortium meeting was scheduled for the next morning, but Erin spent the night reviewing Emily Richardson's medical files. The complexity was staggering. 6 different medications, each with unique storage requirements, dosing windows that shifted based on metabolic markers, potential interactions that could cascade into crisis. Marcus sat beside him, not fully understanding the medical terminology but grasping the patterns. It's like a really hard puzzle where all the pieces keep changing shape. Exactly. We need a system that adapts in real time, predictive rather than reactive. Like the ant colony, but for medicine? Erin looked at his son with wonder. Marcus, you're a genius. I learned from you. No, this is your insight. Ant colony optimization for medical delivery. Each medication as an ant finding its path, the patient's biomarkers as pheromone trails. They worked together until midnight, Erin translating medical requirements into mathematical models, while Marcus suggested simplifications that elegantly solved complex problems. When exhaustion finally forced them to stop, they'd outlined something revolutionary. The consortium meeting the next morning took place in Meridian's new conference center, a space that hadn't existed when Erin left for Shanghai. Representatives from 7 major logistics companies sat around a table that probably cost more than Erin's annual janitor salary had been. Gentlemen, ladies, Charlotte began, you're here because you've seen what the Prometheus system achieved for Walsh and Chen. What we're proposing isn't just licensing that system, but evolving it into something greater. Erin stood, pulling up the presentation he'd prepared on the flight home. But instead of starting with commercial applications, he showed them Emily Richardson's medical protocol. This is a 7-year-old girl who will die without precise medical logistics. Her case represents millions of patients worldwide with complex treatment needs. What if the same system that moves your cargo could save lives? Noble, but what's the ROI? Asked a representative from Deutsche Logistics. Goodwill you can't buy, government contracts for medical transport, first mover advantage in a $1 trillion healthcare logistics market. But more importantly, Erin paused, meeting each person's eyes, the knowledge that your efficiency isn't just about profit, but about purpose. The room was quiet. Then Harrison Walsh, who'd been silently observing, spoke up. My granddaughter lives because of medical innovation. I built an empire moving things. Maybe it's time that empire moved things that matter. The commercial and medical systems would be integrated? Asked another representative. Symbiotic, Erin explained. Commercial routes carrying medical supplies during excess capacity. Medical urgency taking priority during critical windows. The efficiency gains benefit both. Marcus, who'd been quietly drawing in his notebook, suddenly stood up. Can I show them something? Charlotte looked surprised but nodded. Marcus connected his tablet to the main screen, pulling up the game he'd developed in Shanghai. This is logistics as a game, but it's also training. Every player learns optimization without realizing they're learning. We could train thousands of workers, from dock employees to executives, all playing the same game but at different levels. The consortium members leaned forward, several pulling out phones to photograph the screen. Your son built this? The Deutsche Logistics representative asked Erin. With help, but the concept is his. We want that too. The game, the training system, all of it. Walsh laughed. Careful, young Marcus. You're about to become a very wealthy second grader. I don't want money, Marcus said with the clarity only children possess. I want every kid to play it free. The companies can pay for advanced features, but basic learning should be for everyone. The room went silent again, but this time with something approaching awe. Here was a child negotiating with billionaires and winning not through leverage but through principle. Agreed, said Walsh, speaking for the group. Free access for educational use, paid licenses for commercial training. The final deal was more generous than Charlotte had dared hope. $100 million in immediate licensing, ongoing royalties, and most importantly, funding for a medical logistics division that Aaron would lead. Emily Richardson would be the first patient, but thousands would follow. That afternoon, Aaron visited Richardson's home, a mansion in Bellevue that screamed new money and old insecurities. Emily was in a wheelchair, not from her condition, but from weakness. She had her father's sharp features, but softer eyes, eyes that hadn't learned disappointment yet. "You're Marcus's dad," she said. "Daddy says you're going to help me. I'm going to try. Daddy also said he was mean to you, that he tried to take credit for your work." Richardson shifted uncomfortably, but Aaron kept his focus on Emily. "Sometimes adults make mistakes. What matters is fixing them." Emily studied him with that unnerving directness children possessed. "Will you really fix Daddy's mistake?" "I'll fix the logistics problem. Your dad has to fix the rest himself." Aaron spent 3 hours mapping Emily's routine, understanding not just the medical requirements, but the human ones. When she was most alert, when side effects peaked, how her mood affected absorption rates. It wasn't just mathematics, but anthropology, psychology, art. "The system will learn you," Aaron explained to Emily. "Every day it gets better at predicting what you need." Like a friend? Like a very smart friend who never forgets and never gets tired. That evening, Aaron and Marcus visited Sarah's grave for the first time since returning. The cemetery was quiet, rain falling soft as whispers through the evergreens. Marcus placed a drawing on the headstone, their family, including Sarah, all holding hands in front of a building labeled Hope. "Hi, Mom," Marcus said simply. "We helped people like you wanted. Dad's not sad as much anymore. And I'm learning math that even surprises him sometimes." Aaron knelt beside his son, one hand on the wet grass, feeling the earth that held Sarah but couldn't contain her influence. "I understand now," he said quietly. "Why you couldn't stop trying to help, even when it meant time away from us. The work chooses you as much as you choose it." Wind moved through the trees, and for a moment Aaron could almost hear Sarah's laugh, feel her hand on his shoulder, hear her whisper that she was proud, so proud of both her boys. They stayed until dark, not speaking much, just being present with memory and rain and the quiet certainty that love transcends loss when it's translated into purpose. The Emily Richardson system launched 2 weeks later. Aaron had worked 18-hour days, but this time differently. Marcus beside him after school, Jessica coordinating with pharmaceutical companies, even Miguel offering insights from his observations of hospital delivery patterns during his second job. The elegance of the solution stunned everyone. Medications were pre-positioned based on predictive algorithms, doses adjusted via smart delivery systems that responded to real-time biometric data, the entire process choreographed like a ballet where timing was everything. Emily's first week on the system showed immediate improvement. Her energy increased, side effects decreased, and most remarkably, the psychological burden on her parents lightened. They no longer had to fear forgetting a dose or mistiming a delivery. "It's working," Richardson told Aaron, tears streaming down his face. "She played outside yesterday, first time in 6 months." "It's just optimization," Aaron replied, uncomfortable with the naked gratitude. "No, it's redemption, mine and yours. You could have let my spite destroy my daughter, but you chose to save her instead. I chose to solve a problem. The fact that it saved your daughter is a favorable outcome." Richardson studied him. "You really don't care about the human drama, do you?" "Just the mathematics. The mathematics serve the humans. That's all that matters." Word of Emily's improvement spread through the medical community like wildfire. Suddenly, Aaron was fielding calls from hospitals worldwide, each with patients whose lives depended on logistics as much as medicine. The team expanded rapidly, but Aaron insisted on reviewing every case personally, seeing the patterns others might miss. Marcus became an unofficial mascot for the medical logistics division, his game serving as both recruitment tool and training platform. Universities began incorporating it into their curriculum. A 10-year-old in Mumbai used it to design a vaccine delivery system for her village. A teenager in Sao Paulo created supply routes that cut medicine delivery time in favelas by half. "Your game is changing the world," Charlotte told Marcus at a celebration dinner. "Games are just patterns made fun," Marcus replied. "Dad taught me that patterns are everywhere. I just helped people see them." 3 months after their return from Shanghai, Aaron received an unexpected call. Dr. Morrison from WHO was in Seattle, and he brought news that would change everything again. "The UN wants to implement your system globally. Every refugee camp, disaster zone, epidemic response, all running on your logistics platform." Aaron felt the weight of it. This wasn't just optimization anymore, but infrastructure for humanity's most vulnerable moments. That's massive. Sarah's dream realized. Medical care limited only by human resources, not by supply chain failures. "I'll need a team, a big one." "You'll have it." "But Aaron, there's something else." Morrison pulled out a tablet showing a map dotted with red zones. "These are areas where children die from preventable diseases due to logistics failures. We're talking about millions of lives." Aaron studied the map, seeing patterns in the chaos, political instabilities creating supply vacuums, geographical barriers traditional logistics couldn't overcome, economic dead zones where profit-driven systems wouldn't venture. "It's solvable," he said quietly. "Complex, but solvable." "How long?" "Give me 6 months for the framework, a year for implementation. But Morrison, this will require more than algorithms. It needs political will, funding, cooperation from people who usually compete." The consortium already agreed to subsidize it, pro bono work offsetting their carbon footprints and tax bills. Even Richardson contributed, guilty conscience funding, but funding nonetheless. That night, Aaron found Marcus building with his LEGOS, but not randomly. He was recreating the global supply network using different colored blocks for different types of aid. "Planning the solution?" Aaron asked. "Visualizing it. You taught me that seeing the problem is half of solving it." Aaron sat beside his son, adding pieces to the model. Together, they built late into the night, father and son constructing a better world one block at a time. The next morning brought another surprise. Jessica had been offered a position at MIT, teaching the next generation of logistics engineers using the systems Aaron had developed. "I want to take it," she told Aaron, "but only if you're okay running things here without me." "You have to take it. You're ready, more than ready." "I learned from the best, from a janitor who saw what PhDs missed." "You learned from yourself." "I just pointed out what was already there." Jessica hugged him, this woman who'd gone from skeptic to student to peer. "Take care of yourself, Aaron, and that remarkable son of yours." "Marcus takes care of me more than you know." As Jessica's departure approached, Aaron realized he needed to restructure the entire team. But instead of hiring traditionally, he did something unprecedented. He opened applications to anyone, regardless of education or background, who could demonstrate pattern recognition and problem-solving abilities. The response was overwhelming. Thousands applied, from truck drivers to teachers, homemakers to homeless individuals who'd observed city flows from society's margins. Aaron personally reviewed each application, looking for the spark that transcended credentials. One application stood out: a woman named Maria Santos, a hospital janitor from Los Angeles who'd included hand-drawn diagrams of medical supply inefficiencies she'd observed over 20 years of night shifts. "This is brilliant," Aaron told Charlotte, showing her Maria's sketches. "She's identified problems we haven't even addressed yet." "Then hire her." "A janitor." Charlotte smiled. "Seems appropriate, doesn't it?" Maria arrived 2 weeks later, nervous and disbelieving that she'd been flown to Seattle for a real position. Aaron met her in the same basement where he'd once changed into his janitor uniform. "I know this seems strange," he began. "Strange? Sir, 2 months ago I was mopping blood off emergency room floors. Now you're telling me my observations could save lives?" "They already have." Your diagram of supply is getting bottlenecked during shift changes. We've implemented that fix in 12 hospitals. Average emergency response time improved by 4 minutes. Maria sat down heavily on the same bench where Aaron had once contemplated his hidden life. My supervisor said I was wasting time with those drawings. Intelligence doesn't respect job titles, Aaron said, echoing Miguel's words. Neither should opportunity. Maria became one of Aaron's most valuable team members, her decades of observation providing insights that algorithms alone couldn't generate. She brought a human element to the mathematics, reminding everyone that behind every optimization were real people in real pain seeking real help. The global medical logistics system launched on a rainy Tuesday that reminded Aaron of the night everything began, the night of the fire when his notebook had fallen and Charlotte had seen what the janitor had hidden. Now, instead of hiding, Aaron stood before the UN General Assembly, explaining how mathematics could save millions of lives. Marcus watched from Charlotte's apartment in New York, pride radiating from his 8-year-old face as his father spoke about ant colonies and optimization, about patterns and purpose, about Sarah's dream becoming reality through collaborative effort. Your dad's kind of amazing, Charlotte told Marcus. He always was. He just forgot for a while. The system's first deployment was in South Sudan, where refugee camps had struggled with medical supply delivery for decades. Within a week, medication reached populations that had been effectively abandoned by traditional logistics. Within a month, infant mortality rates began dropping. Aaron monitored everything from Seattle, his office now a command center tracking global medical flows. But he never forgot the human element. Each successful delivery was a child receiving vaccines, a diabetic getting insulin, a pregnant woman accessing prenatal vitamins. Emily Richardson visited the office on a good day, walking on her own, color in her cheeks that had been absent for years. She brought a card she'd made, crayon drawings of hearts and mathematical symbols mixed together. "Thank you for making me better," she said simply. "Thank you for being brave enough to test the system," Aaron replied. "Daddy says you're a hero." "I'm just someone who solves problems." "Maybe that's what heroes really do." After she left, Aaron found Richardson waiting in the lobby. The man who'd once radiated arrogance now seemed smaller, humbler, worn down by gratitude and guilt in equal measure. "She's going to live," Richardson said, "a normal life because of you, because of mathematics, and modern medicine, and pharmaceutical innovation. I just connected the pieces. You connected them after I tried to destroy you. That's not mathematics. That's grace." Aaron thought about grace, about Sarah's ability to forgive his obsessive work habits, about Marcus's forgiveness of a father who'd hidden from the world, about his own journey from bitterness to purpose. "We all need grace sometimes," Aaron said finally, "even those who don't deserve it." "Especially those who don't deserve it," Richardson corrected. "Thank you, Aaron, for everything." They shook hands, not as friends, but as humans who'd learned that redemption was possible even in the deepest failures. As spring arrived in Seattle, bringing cherry blossoms and longer days, Aaron received word that the medical logistics system had prevented its millionth unnecessary death. The number was staggering, abstract, impossible to fully comprehend. But Aaron thought of it as individual victories, a million Emilys, a million chances at life that logistics had stolen but mathematics had returned. Marcus, now firmly established in his advanced classes and teaching older students his game-based learning approach, came to the office after school with news of his own. "I got invited to speak at the International Mathematics Conference," he announced, "about pattern recognition in early education." "Marcus, that's incredible. You're 8 years old, almost 9, and age is just a number. You taught me that ability doesn't respect conventional categories." Aaron pulled his son close, remembering the scared, grieving child who'd drawn rockets and asked about mathematics to feel closer to parents, one dead, one dying inside. That child had become this confident, brilliant, compassionate young person who saw the world as fixable rather than broken. "I'm proud of you," Aaron said. "I'm proud of you too, Dad. You stopped hiding your light. You showed me how to shine it." That evening, they walked through the city as sunset painted the Sound gold. Seattle had become truly home again, not just a place they lived, but a community they belonged to. Shop owners knew them, Other parents waved from playground. Marcus's friends called out greetings in multiple languages he'd taught them. They stopped at the spot where Sarah had proposed to Aaron 13 years ago, a small park overlooking the water. Aaron rarely came here, too many memories, but tonight felt different. "Tell me about when Mom proposed," Marcus requested, though he knew the story by heart. "She said mathematics was my first language, but love was hers, and she wanted to spend her life translating between them." "Did she?" "Every day. Even now in the work we're doing. It's all translation, turning love into action, action into systems, systems into saved lives." Marcus pulled out his notebook, sketching quickly. When he showed Aaron the drawing, it was their family, past, present, and future combined. Sarah was there as light surrounding them, not gone, but transformed. Aaron was drawn tall and strong, no longer hiding, and Marcus himself stood between worlds, one foot in childhood, one stepping toward the vast future he would help create. "We're still a family," Marcus said, "just configured differently." "Like an optimized algorithm," Aaron agreed, understanding that optimization didn't mean perfect, just the best possible with the given constraints. As they headed home, Aaron's phone buzzed with updates from around the world. Vaccines reaching Myanmar villages, surgical supplies arriving in Somalia, insulin maintained at perfect temperatures across the Sahara. Each notification was a life touched, a tragedy prevented, a promise kept to Sarah's memory. But Aaron silenced the phone, focusing instead on Marcus's chatter about school, friends, the new robot he wanted to build. These moments, walking with his son, being present, choosing connection over calculation, these were the true optimizations. The Aaron Miles Innovation Center officially opened 6 months later, on what would have been Sarah's 40th birthday. The building rose from a neglected Seattle neighborhood, its architecture a blend of mathematical precision and human warmth. The main lecture hall was named after Sarah, the children's education wing after Marcus, who'd insisted his name be in small letters because the work matters more than the credit. The opening ceremony drew hundreds, former students, current colleagues, competitors who'd become collaborators, and surprisingly, a delegation of janitors from buildings across Seattle. Miguel spoke for them, his words simple but profound. Aaron Miles proved that brilliance can wear any uniform, speak any language, come from any background. This center isn't just about innovation in logistics or medicine. It's about innovation in how we see each other, value each other, lift each other. Aaron stood to speak, Marcus beside him, as always. The boy who'd once hidden from the world now faced it with clear eyes and steady voice. 5 years ago, I was mopping floors in this city, hiding from grief in myself. Today, systems we built are saving lives globally. But the real transformation wasn't in the algorithms or the code. It was in learning that our greatest disasters can become our greatest gifts if we're brave enough to transform them. He looked at Marcus, at Charlotte, at the team that had become family. My wife died believing that medical care should be universal. My son taught me that education should be accessible. This center stands as proof that when we stop hiding our light, whatever that light might be, we can illuminate paths for others. The applause was warm and sustained, but Aaron barely heard it. He was thinking about patterns, the fire that had revealed his notebook, the tragedy that had hidden his talent, the child who'd brought him back to life, the work that had given purpose to pain. Everything connected. Every loss led to learning. Every optimization opened new opportunities. Every algorithm was ultimately about love translated into logic. As the ceremony ended and people toured the center, Aaron found himself in the quiet meditation room he'd insisted on including. Through the window, Seattle sprawled in all its complex glory, a city of systems and stories, patterns, and people. Marcus found him there, as he always did when Aaron needed grounding. "You did it, Dad. You changed the world. We did it, all of us. And we're just getting started." "What's next?" Aaron pulled out a new notebook, its pages still blank, waiting for problems to solve and patterns to discover. "Whatever needs fixing, whatever needs optimizing, whatever helps people." "So basically everything?" "Basically everything." They sat together in comfortable silence, father and son, mathematician and student, past and future converging in a present that finally finally felt like enough. Outside, Seattle hummed with life. Trucks following optimized routes, hospitals receiving critical supplies, children learning through games that made complexity joyful. Somewhere, Emily Richardson was playing soccer, her medications delivered with clockwork precision. Somewhere, villages were receiving vaccines that would have spoiled in transit. Somewhere, a janitor was sketching solutions to problems others hadn't even noticed yet. The work continued, would always continue, but Erin had learned the most important optimization of all, that success meant nothing without someone to share it with, that brilliance without purpose was just elaborate emptiness, that hiding your light didn't protect it, but diminished it.